So that is being rethought and rewritten by Pratibha Rai. So anyway, so coming back to, because I'm going to root it into kind of whatever I understand from Odia literature and bring that to national level.
Can I add
please,
something to what Anuja said?
We'll come back to men afterwards, after the women have done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which may not be, you start proving, mythology, like you start getting evidences, then you kind of shift it. So the timeline continues to shift. A story might be a mythological story, and then, suddenly you'll find evidence, you find a stone, or you find something, you dig up something somewhere, and then it's history, then it shifts. So the timeline is shifting. For me, all of them are stories. And I don't like to use the word, myth much. I like to call them scriptures. I feel comfortable when I say they are scriptures, instead of, segregating them under mythology and history. So, I simplify my life by calling them scriptures. End of the story. It's like that for me.
So, for you, does scripture mean, because if I go to the etymology of word, script, the basic scripture is script.
I'm not such a complicated person. I simplify everything. For me, simplification is all of them bunched together as, Hindu scriptures or Indian scriptures.
Okay. So maybe we'll go back to etymology later. Son, what is originally there as a story? For Devi Bhagavat Mahapuran, son, what is originally there as a story? For Devi Bhagavat Mahapuran, now he's talking about Mahishasura. Maybe we'll start with that first. And then, we'll start in the sense of how you creatively able to engage with this scripture, which has been accepted as a canonical literature at one level. And second level, you engage with creative imagination, and people call in English tradition creative fictionalization in that. And how do you present it for the present day audience in such a way that it doesn't dilute at one level, but it doesn't necessarily remain Puritan? Yeah, over to you.
Lot of things what we take from the West doesn't apply to India. One of them is scripture. India is not a culture of scriptures. Scriptures are just a very small percentage of the entire Hindu philosophy. All the entire written Sanskrit scriptures, which itself is humongous, doesn't even form 1% of the total stories available in the country. There is nothing canonical about Indian civilization. There are no commandments. There is no the book. There is no the Bhagavad Gita. There is no the Ramayana. There are so many. One of my books is Many Ramayanas, which deals around more than 1,000 Ramayanas. I wrote it 5-6 years ago, after 25 years of my encounters with Ramayana. And in the last 5 years, I have encountered another 1,000 stories, perhaps, versions of it. There is no end to it. There is not even the Valmiki Ramayana. At least the Valmiki Ramayana has 3 versions. Right. So what is canonical? It is ultimately different ways of looking at life and nothing more. It could be the Vaishnavite way of looking, it could be Shaivite way of looking, it could be the Gnostic way of looking. Everything is valid, everything is truth. And when we use a foreign language, which definitely we are using now, the English, it has its own problem because every language comes from the geography of that place. So when they say it is dark, it is evil for them. For us, dark is Sham, is Krishna.
And Kali.
It's Draupadi, it's Kali.
And Kali.
The word itself changes. You say you are a very warm-hearted person. You translate it to Indian language, it means you are an angry person. Here, when you are welcoming somebody, it is a Sukha Sheetal welcome. It's not a warm welcome. Yeah, Indians never called it truth, because Indians always said that there are different ways of truth. There is no the dharma. In Mahabharata and itself is an entire debate on dharma. Whose dharma? Dharma Yudh, when they talk about it, it's not about good versus evil. It is about my dharma versus your dharma. And my dharma also keeps changing. It is swadharma. It keeps changing as per the time, context, tala, kala. It changes based on that. So when we talk about truth, when we talk about history, Indians never looked at Indians or the entire Indosphere up to Indonesia, Japan, which has Hinduism, what we now call as Hinduism, Buddhism, but these are all various darshanas, Jainism, Sikhism, Nastika, all these things. It's a way of looking at life. There are so many darshanas, there are as many darshanas as there are humans, there are as many Ramayanas as There are humans, there is no beginning and end, and we were never worried about history. So last session there was a question whether Ramayana is true, historical or not. I answered that if you go by the Ramayana, any version of Ramayana, it cannot be historical, because Ramayana itself mentions about thousands of Ramayanas. If it is historical, it cannot have thousands of versions of it. Thousands of Ramayanas before, this is an infinite loop. And it happens, Sambhavami Yuge Yuge, it keeps on happening. So it cannot be the narrow sense of history, it cannot be the narrow sense of truth, what we are talking about. The truth definition itself changes, so we are confusing and confounding ourselves with the limitations of English language in grasping the complexity of India, is what I will put.
I think, Anandji, you have put it well. Coming from someone like a practitioner who deep dives, does research, encounters people, brings new dimensions to those storytelling, it is useful to understand where you are coming from. My simple submission is this: history, if I translate that into Sanskrit or any Indo-specific language, itihasa. So history, maybe that is another definition, his story. All male people sat together, wrote about something what happened in the past. So his story, there is no her story. So maybe women can start writing her story, then history, that will be not only masters in history, I have done masters in her story. So there can be an MA in that. So point is, history also, like science, has a limitation. What I'm saying is that if I say, some people use that word prehistoric. Why? Because the modern understanding of historiography, if I understand that historiography is a process of identifying carbon dating, there are things that I will use linguistic patterns, I will use maybe a sculpture, maybe an art form somewhere. So Silalekh kahin se. So I will try to dig up something, find something. Mahinder Harappa may have not been known at all, maybe 100 years ago. Maybe Chanakya was not known 1905 before. Maybe when Rama Sastri finds it out. So point is, now about Chanakya there are a lot of stories, and then what he did. Right? So what I'm saying, before 1905, maybe 1904, the person may not have known who Chanakya is. So point is there a selective amnesia about history? Question number one. And is there a limitation that history has because of its own inherent lacunae of historiographic methods developed by the West, adopted by the East and everywhere else? For example, I will utilize another analogy of science. They say, what are the characteristics of science? Someone says 5. Objectivity, verifiability, predictability, universality, replicability. These are 5 characteristics of science. Science itself says, if you are not able to question me as untruth or truth now until disproved, so history has to be science. So in that way, history has its own limit. And my point is, the topic is rethinking myth, history and truth. So can myth talk about truth? Or can history talk about truth? Or truth exists in its own way, myth and history are ways to find out. So what is the method? So history has its inherent limitation. When Anandji says that Ramayana is not historical, perhaps he's coming from the understanding of there is a history at a particular context, starts from, okay, BC this. And then everything else is prehistoric. So essentially, as a creative retailing personality, do I have the right to question that what is that prehistoric and history, BC and AD, that artificial way? That one example that comes to my mind quickly, I will come back to a reader who is with us, also with the panel. So this is a unique Kalinga Literary Festival experimentation, that a reader who is also coming with the speakers will share a few lines. But at this point, John Stuart Mill's father, James Mill, writes the first Indian history, divides Indian history into 3 segments, says Hindu history, which is ancient India, Muslim history, which is medieval India, Christian history, which is modern India. He doesn't say Christian history, but the meaning is that. We have to read between lines. And his entire qualification was, I never went to India. I sat in London. Sorry for the language. The idiots who were viceroys and lords who were idiots, absolute idiots, they wrote whatever they wanted to write about India, and that another idiot sitting in London writing another idiotic history, and we're adopting it. Oh, medieval India, modern India, ancient 8th century. And also one example. Let's ask one question. Let's go to Shankaracharya's office today in Govardhan Mutt in Puri. Ask them where Shankaracharya was born, when he was born. The modern history says 8th century AD in Kerala. You ask Shankaracharyas, they will say, not that. So the inherent contestation that exists within history and mythology and truth-telling needs to be recognized at one level, and absolutely in that continuum should be explored rather than fixed. Anything else you would like to say?
Well, I think you can't be a writer without being a reader. So essentially, we're a panel of readers who have just read really well to write. But yeah, for me, I think history is based on evidence, and mythology. Both of them, like ma'am said.
Who decides what is evidence?
The people who are doing the research. But it's yeah, everything is biased. But
I'm going to engage with you in tete-a-tete if you say this. I'm saying, who decides what is evidence?
exactly, who's found
History, if men have told about a particular story, they have de-recognized women's role in the history, despite evidence existing. The Vedas have women who have recharged, they have written, but entirely men are cited always. Why?
No, it's actually, see, to talk about...
Sorry for being aggressive and using those words.
No. It's damn cool. But see, even today, it's supposed to be the age of information. The genocide in Gaza is being live streamed. It's right there in front of our eyes, and yet there is zero consensus about what exactly is happening there. It all depends on which side you belong to. When you talk about evidence, when you're talking about statistical research, who's sponsoring the research? So there's always a vested interest at play, and whether in the past without technology, today without technology, there's no agreement about what actually happened, because the truth demands that you put in personal effort to arrive at it. It's never ever going to be, a click of a button away. Yeah. So I think that's just it. That's the crux of it. If you want to find out the truth, you need to commit yourself to finding it for yourself in a very...
and whose truth?
Yeah. If you're committed to the real truth, the one truth.
Does that exist?
Does it exist? Exactly. It's a lifelong quest, and we are lazy bums, pardon the language. We want to sit down in the Instagram age. We want everything handed to us on a silver platter, which is why we are a confused, idiotic lot.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Anandji.
I think, I'm not provoked. Why should I be provoked for these things? It's nothing so important in life to be provoked for this.
Mythology and history debate, yeah.
First thing, one correction, Mahabharata is called Itihasa, Ramayana is Kavya. It's Adi Kavya, it's Kavya, Mahabharata is Itihasa, the rest are all Puranas. That setting it apart. We were never a culture which was bothered about history. That's why we forgot Chanakya, we forgot Chandragupta Maurya, we forgot Ashoka. It doesn't matter in life. How does it matter in life? Indians had figured out life far better and deeper than many other civilizations. Why should I be bothered about which king did what 2000 years ago? It is only a nationalistic inferiority complex and pride masquerading as the aggression for finding history. 200 years back, my grandparents might not have even heard about Akbar. Talk about Muslim, Hindu era. Where I come from Kerala, the Akbars and Mughals and Aurangzebs were 2,000 kilometers away. They would not have even heard about all these people. So what are we talking about? They are not even bothered, most of the places. All this aggression that we were defeated civilization, 1,000 years invasion, whereby Delhi is not India. Delhi is one panchayat in ancient India which was not even important. Delhi, Kanauj was a city, Ujjain was a city, civilization, Kalinga was a kingdom, Vijayanagara was a kingdom, Madurai was a kingdom, Cheras were a kingdom. Where was Delhi? Delhi Sultanate and all. Delhi Sultanate is the only one in 13th century which ruled some parts of, parts of Andhra and all. The entire south was cut off, and actually the entire south was at the center of the world in the entire sea trade. So when even the Africans or the West knew about India, they didn't much know about the cities of Varanasi or other things. For the West, the India or the famed tolerance of India, everything was on the peninsular India, where the coasts were there, where the main trade routes were passing, connecting Japan to Europe. That was the center of the world at that time, the most important thing. So all this narration of our aggression about we have been wronged in history, my grandparents or great parents would be surprised because they didn't give a damn about history. Why should they? None of that. That's why Sir correctly said until Mr. Shastri identified it, nobody even bothered about Chanakya. We don't need Chanakya. Why do we not? Chanakya is long dead and gone. Why do we need Chandragupta Maurya? He is long dead and gone. We were always a forward-looking civilization. We were always living in a cyclical time because we know that we are living in Kali Yuga. Now again Satyayug will start. That was a philosophy, no? Why are we bothered about who ruled 600 years before? Well, we know Shankara, we have a respect for Shankaracharya. I come from the land of Shankaracharya. His birthplace is 5 kilometers away from my village.
Kaladi.
Okay. Actually, Shankaracharya was not born in Kaladi. He was born in his mother's house. Kaladi is his father's house.
Okay.
So that is near one place called Piravam, where Swami Chinmayananda has taken that house of his mother where he was born is still preserved. That place. Whether it is 8th century or 2nd century or 3rd century is irrelevant for somebody who is studying Vedanta. How does it matter? He could have been born yesterday. He comes in the same parampara of, Vivekananda comes in the same parampara of Advaita. Narayana Guru comes in the same parampara. It's a huge chain of Advaitis, and only that Guru parampara you are worried about. Which date they were born, who was their father, who was their mother, what they did. It's a very Western way of looking at things, and we are getting agitated. Let the West tell whatever they want. No, they are not bothered. Are they bothered about what we are telling about them? So why should we be bothered about what they are telling about us? Our ancestors have been living without even knowing that a country like Delhi existed, forget Europe existed. So why are we bothered about this now?
Can I add that I totally agree with him? I mean, it's irrelevant, the dates and all. In fact, I'm a science student, and why I didn't like history was because of the dates. So I could remember the stories, but not the dates. So for me, dates have always been irrelevant. I think the stories are important, what you learn from them, what you understand about the whatever civilizations, cultures, people, and so on and so forth. Dates, what is
one more thing can I add? Sorry, one more thing. Indians never bothered about the kings. Indians bothered about the gurus. We have a clear remembrance of all the gurus including the Nastikas of Charvakas and Jabalis. Every Darsana's Guru Parampara we remember.
The Parampara, yeah.
We don't remember the kings because kings are irrelevant. They are politicians. So Indians, how we treat our politicians now with the same disdain they were treated.
Kings made history.
So kings come, kings go, and our kings even didn't put history except a few kings. Few kings like perhaps Rajaraja Chola who inscribed everything, Ashoka who inscribed everything which Britishers wanted to find out. Rajaraja's temples are still there. Except few of them, nobody bothered. Even the kings were thought to be not to be bothered about that. So if you go to the various temples, especially the existing temples in the south, many of them in the north were destroyed during the invasion. In the south you find that, for example, Padmanabha, you find that the king and his consort, their sculpture is on the gate of the temple where every devotee will walk over it. This was a humility which was taught. And the king is not putting for his glory, he is not a Roman emperor who adds a month to it. The emperor who built such a big building, the kings lived in palaces made of wood and the temples were made of stone. And the king's sculptures were put, this is the parampara we are coming from. So the king doesn't even want to be remembered in his name, most of the kings. It was looked down upon by our culture. Now look at the present day kings. Unless you put their photos everywhere, they don't even give you the subsidies. Even in ration card, they are giving their photos. This is because we have become westernized. We think we are protecting our civilization, but rather we are becoming like the great autocrats of Rome and Greece and other things, and they are not following the Indian tradition of a Janaka, Indian tradition of a Dasharatha, the Indian tradition of all the kings who Kalidasa talks about in Raghuvamsha. We have forgotten about that. That is what we should be worried about, not on whether Shankaracharya was born on 7th century or 8th century or yesterday. How does it matter? It's Shankaracharya, whatever he has taught. Whatever we can take in this time, we should take. Whatever we should reject. Just like Buddha says, don't accept anything just because some book has told, some guru has told, or even I in the sense Buddha has told.
No.
Do it, experiment it, have anubhava, which is very important than experiment. Experience it yourself and arrive at the truth. This is all this is all what it matters. The definition of truth is what I perceive as truth at this particular time. It can change. So Gandhi also says about that, my commitment is to the truth, but the truth may keep changing because my perception changes, my experiences changes. This is the parampara from which we are coming from. This is what we should uphold, is what I think.
Wanted to say something.
It's what he says is right. Everybody has their own truth. So there is no one truth. It's, wherever from we are looking at.
I think many people at the literary and philosophical level, truth being varied and relative and subjective is okay. But truth being varied at a certain level makes many people uncomfortable. Oh, there can be several truths as well. So,
yes.
yeah, that's. So, I think Krishna says at the end of Bhagavad Gita, says, I have entirely told the stories of yoga, whatever you want to do. Now, you have understood, whatever you want to do on your own. So it is no commandment. Find your own truth, if you can. So thank you so much. I think this is a very short session because of me. It was delayed. I think next session is going to start soon. And apologies to all the excellent panelists. I think if we meet with them one by one day full, they can talk about the work and the debates. And I wanted to provoke some of them. They were not provoked. Thank you for that. Thank you.
So the session was very insightful and moving. I would like Mr. K.K. Das to felicitate Sunita Pant.
He wanted a warm word not to be used. Picture?
Ladies and gentlemen present over here, we now move into the vital conversation titled South Asia, Her Stories. This session is a tribute to the diverse feminine narratives of our region, tales of resilience, heritage, and the evolving identity of the South Asian women. We have our speaker panel with us. Vaishali Hamlai ma'am, known for her insightful contributions to the literary landscape. And with joining her will be Priya Arora ma'am, a storyteller who navigates through the complexities of the culture and modern identity. Now, guiding this powerhouse, a panel, is our moderator, Suman Barsha ma'am. Her real name is Suman Ghumire, and she lives in Kathmandu, Nepal. She has done MPhil, and she is currently a lecturer of English literature of Pashupati Multiple Campus. She has published 2 novels till date. Her first novel was Dukuti, and second novel was published in 2078. One anthology of poems was also published, along with 6 writers. She is also a committee member of the International Nepalese Literary Society, and the Nepal Shastra Samaj, and the International Nepalese Literary Society, and also the Gunjan Literary Society. Ma'am. The session is, ma'am, for half an hour. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today's panel, South Asia, Her Stories, focuses on women's lived experience across the region. These stories are shaped by patriarchy, caste, class, conflict, and culture, but also by resilience, resistance, and leadership. Rather than seeing South Asian women as a single narrative, this conversation highlights diverse forces and voices also, and how women negotiate tradition and modernity while shaping social change. Actually, here Mona Lisa should be because her flight is delayed, and I am moderating the session. And I would like to welcome distinguished panelists over here. Let me introduce them. First, let me introduce Priya Arora. She is an author, spiritual seeker, lifelong student of Vedanta. She born and raised in Kolkata. She studied English literature at Oxford University and later built a successful career in banking and technology in the US, where she has lived for over 30 years. I would like to welcome her in this panel.
Thank you.
And our next panelist, Ms. Vaishali Hamlai. Vaishali Hamlai holds master degree in human resource management. She also holds human resources at a renowned company. Her aim is to make reading essay and relatable. She draws applicable and recent norms from the society and gives her take on it. Yeah, this introduction is not enough for them, but I'm so sorry because I was not prepared about them. I did not find them in the Google, and I did not search anything about them. That's why I did not know much about them, because at a time I have to moderate the session, and I will try my best to make some questions to them so that you will get the insight from them.
I think you've done very good justice. Yeah. Thank you so much. Maybe you could give us introduction about yourself also.
Yeah, I'm Suman Barsa from Nepal, and here the announcer has told something about me, and I have done my MPhil degree in English literature, and I have been teaching for 16 years in Pashupati Multiple College, Kathmandu. And I would like to ask question to Vaishali ma'am. Why has literature been such an important space for South Asian women to express their lived experience?
I think literature is very important for women in South Asia because this is their voice. This is the place where they can have absolutely unfiltered, unadulterated expression of freedom of expression, the way they want to put it across, in the way they want to put it across, in the best words that they want to put it across. They can say it as a story, they can say it as theories, but it's a standard platform.
Thank you. Yeah, as you told, this is the platform. You know that women are going through a lot of struggle, and so many barriers are there to enhance their career, isn't it? That every one of us going through that. And how can we tell our stories through our writing, ma'am?
So, you know, actually, I live, to be honest, in Treta Yuga and Dwapara Yuga. So I'm like not from here. So I can tell you about women at that time more than I can tell you about women today. But so the point of view that I bring is that actually we come from a culture where women had a very high place in society. In today's society, it's hard to believe that because yes, things are not very equal now. But we do come from a society where women were actually, you would say, equal to men, contrary to what we think. You know, even in the Veda, if you see, there are 27 Rishikas who've contributed to Vedic hymns. And the Vedas are the most sacred writings. And if the women's voices are there, there are very few texts, I would say, sacred texts, that have voices of women. I don't know of any other. So that tells you the status, if they were included. And also, if you look at our ancient texts, our Ramayana, Mahabharata, the depiction of women is very powerful. Unfortunately, what I find is that they have not been well translated. And as a result, one of the things that really bothers me actually is the depiction of Sita. You know, when you see these TV serials and movies and things, she's depicted as a very meek woman. She's walking 2 steps behind, saying, yes, whatever you want to do, I'll do. That's not the Sita in the actual Valmiki Ramayana. She's a very powerful character, very strong woman. And their relationship is one of equals. They're peers. She advises him, she counsels him, she scolds him. You never see that in, you know, and in a polite way. When I say scolds him, I mean in a very polite way, not to be offensive, but as you would a good friend. So, in fact, when I always say this, that when a pointer to this of their relationship is when Raja Janak hands, well, not hands, he in the Pani Grahana ceremony, he says to Sri Ram, this is my daughter Sita, she will be your Sahadharmachari, your partner in dharma. So the accent is on partnership. It's not that she's there to serve you. I'm not giving my daughter to you to be your maid, maid. She's there to be your partner in life. That was our culture. So yeah, that's the voice that I think we need to revive.
Somewhere I think it is there. It is very much over there. But I feel that women neglect that part themselves. Yes. There is a part of women which they say that they are not worthy, or they don't feel that they can get that right. But at the end of the day, it's about just, it's there, it's just available. It just needs to be taken. Yes. I think that step forward is pretty much there, but again, there's a large part of the society where they've not still taken that step.
Yes. But it's coming, you know. You see there is a huge change. I see even in my lifetime, and I'm old, but not that old. So, you know, in this lifetime, I've seen the change. You know, when I started work, I remember I worked for a bank, and I had moved from Bombay to Delhi. And I walked in the first day in a skirt, very modest skirt, below knee and all that. And that was frowned upon. And this was in 1990. It was frowned upon. It was like not okay. And today, you see women. I know you look at the news, you see everywhere. Women are dressed the way they want to be dressed. And so in my short lifetime is what I'm saying, you see the emancipation. Nothing happens overnight. But it will happen, and we are equal. You see, that is the thing. In our minds, women have to think that we are equal. You don't have to think that I have to get somebody to treat me equally. I demand to be treated equally. I am equal. If you think that way, then you will be treated that way.
Yeah, you're right, absolutely right. We have to acclaim, we have to think, we have to force to everyone to obey or to listen to us. That's why her stories in South Asian region, we are telling our stories, isn't it? That's why history, mythology should be written, rewritten it from the perspective, from the point of view of women. Whatever Priya ma'am you have told is so insightful. And we are in literary program, that's why we are centering in literature. That's why I would like to question Vaisali ma'am related to literature. Then how do stories and poems succeed in saying what history or politics often cannot?
I think I can pretty much second that, because all my books are on women empowerment. I have taken different topics and seen at the end of the book, the women has always come out successful and stronger than what she is. I believe that's about it. That itself is a testament that, any story that you write, be it a woman or a man, is the story that you write for your own self. It has nothing to do with a female or a male over here.
Can I just add something to that? Because that's a very important point that you mentioned. Storytelling is the most powerful medium of instruction. There is no medium of instruction more powerful than storytelling. And there's a very interesting origin of the Panchatantra. You've all heard of Panchatantra, right? So you know how it originated. There was this king in the southern part of India, and he had 3 sons, and the sons were all very dim-witted. So he was very worried. He said, now what am I going to do with these 3 dim-witted sons? Who's going to take over after me? I need to train them, and I need to train them fast. I don't have 12 years. They were already teenagers. Huh? So he says, I don't have 12 years to put them through education. So somebody told him that, okay, there's this Brahmin called Vishnu Sharma. He's very smart, and he's very good with students, and I'm sure he can help you. So he calls this Vishnu Sharma. Vishnu Sharma comes there, and he takes on these students. And he says, I guarantee you that in 6 months, they will be trained. So the king says, that's amazing if you can do that. And he devises the Panchatantra to teach them lessons. So each one of those stories carries a very deep lesson. And that shows you the power of storytelling, that somebody can learn so much better through a story than through a sermon. You sit and you try and give a lecture, and half the people are nodding off. But you have a story, and that's why the Ramayana and the Mahabharata were composed. They were composed to teach us dharma. That was the only reason they were composed. In fact, Valmiki says that. In the beginning of the Ramayana, he's talking to Narada, who is his guru, and he says that. He says that, he asks Narada, he says, can you tell me the story? Can you tell me who there is in this world? He says, Kon vasmin sampratam loke gunavan kasya viryavan. That means, who is there in today's world? Who is all these qualities, who is a dharmagnya, who is viryavan, all this. Because he knew that the way to get the idea of dharma out to the people is through a story. So that is a very powerful means of communication.
Okay. Now, again, I would like to ask Priya ma'am, you can give the answer with example as well, because there were lots of female writers in South Asia, and how have women writers in South Asia challenged traditional portrayal of women in literature? You can give some the example of writers and how they have empowered women through their writing.
As I said, I'm in Treta Yuga and Dwapara Yuga, so I don't know about modern writers, so maybe I'll defer that question to you.
Yeah, I would like to switch this question to Vaisali ma'am.
I don't know specifically which one we could talk about. Maybe you could help us over here?
Yeah, like Ma Sweta Devi, isn't it, here? And there are many more writers. There, Gayatri Spivak also there, who has written for women's voice, isn't it? And other writers are also there, Arundhati Roy, God of Small Things, okay? And Kamala Das is also raising her voice through her writing for empowering women. We can take the example of them as well, and how they have shaped the life of women in modern area.
You know, the one that you were talking about where, you know, the story that you just said, it just made me think about any role in a house, any role, anything that is being taken care is usually the women. The women that takes care of the house, takes care of the kids, takes care of everything, and also takes care of her own personal wishes, her own personal desires. That's where it just shows the strength of the women over there.
Right.
Very nice. Yeah, you are right. The things are going to happen like this way. And now I would like to ask Priya ma'am, why are women's story through literature, media, or oral narratives so powerful in creating social change? Because women, we read the book, we read novel, we read fiction and non-fiction, and we are roaming around the world they have created, isn't it? And while we are reading, we ourselves being are in the form of that scene, and we are just escaping ourselves from our what is called that arena or area, and how this powerful writing changed the life of women, or we can say human being.
Well, you know, to be honest, I think that women are in a society, women are the first teachers of children. Yeah. So you see, it starts from there. That is the responsibility that we have, that we shape as women. When I say we, we shape the next generation. That's a huge responsibility and a huge power that is given, and which is why, again, in the ancient times, they recognized that status. Women were given a very high status because they had that, they were in that position of shaping thought from childhood.
I'd like to add over here, I think whenever I read a book on anything, it could be a topic which is very sensitive, I would read something which is very relatable to me. I will always think about it in my circumstances. I will always think about it how it has worked out for me. So for example, you know, if I write a book on narcissism and somebody reads it and relates to it and then sees it go through, I'm sure somebody or the other would be able to see what to do, what are the steps for that. If somebody reads a book on mental health, you will read a book and then you know how to go about with it. But if you've not read it, if literature doesn't provide that as a platform, then it's not there, it's not out there. Not everybody has read or has studied everything. But when you're trying to say through a story, it's very relatable. Like in a story, you will give instances, this happened. And that's when the person can relate to it and say, oh, this also happens to me, instead of putting it down as a theory.
Yeah, you are true. Yeah, you know, female writers are very afraid of labeling herself as to be called feminist, isn't it? And that feminism, they are afraid of that terminology, feminism. And it is very risky for them to write on the issues of female, especially being a radical feminist, isn't it? What risks do women face when they speak or write their stories in South Asian societies today? I would like to ask this question to Priya ma'am.
Well, I think that, you know, society, the way it's been, especially over the last few centuries, women were not empowered to have a voice. But now that women are getting a voice, I think it is happening. I think women are speaking out. And I don't think right now if you see the number of women writers that there are, that they are holding back, you know? You mentioned Arundhati Roy, and her latest book is a very frank discussion of her own life. So now that would not have been possible maybe some years ago, right? It might have been frowned upon, but today it's accepted. So I think the voices of women are being heard more and more.
Yeah, we should need to take challenge or take a risk to write about women and to raise their voice, isn't it? And I would like to ask question to Vaishali ma'am. Do you see tradition as a restrictive, or can it also be a space of agency and resistance for women? Do you see tradition as restrictive? Okay.
No, I don't think our tradition is restrictive. I think our tradition is very open. It's the interpretation which is very, cobulated, which is filtered. If you look at tradition the way it is, it clearly says do what you want, do as you feel, just gauge your own right and wrong, and then take a decision. Deep inside, everybody's conscience knows what's right and wrong, and our tradition actually nurtures us and teaches us to know what is right or wrong, and right and wrong cannot be the same at all the time. It can be different in different circumstances. Tradition, in fact, helps us. It's a guiding path. It gives us an idea on what path to go, but at the end of the day, it gives us also the liberty to choose and decide the right thing at the right circumstance.
Thank you. We have limitation of time. Then already our volunteer has given me cheat over here. And here, Vaishali ma'am, whatever she has told to us, then I would like to give liberty to the audience to ask the question, is the tradition giving us liberty, not restriction? From audience side, you can ask to Vaishali ma'am if you agree with her or not. From audience side. Any question from audience side? Yeah, the Gen Z voice should be.
Yeah, he's here.
Ma'am, as you said that traditions don't change the woman. I also believe in that because it has its flaws, but everything has its flaws. So without traditions, what are we? We don't have any identity. Like, we will be like those Americans then. In India, we have rich tradition. Then why not follow it and make it our identity instead of finding flaws and all? And we should focus upon the optimistic side rather than the pessimistic side. So I think that.
I just want to say one thing. In terms of tradition, what is our Bharatiya tradition? Our Bharatiya tradition is dharma. We are a dharmic civilization. So what is that dharma? That dharma is not religion. That dharma is, I like to define dharma this way. Think of it as the right thing to do in the circumstance for the good of the many. So anything that you do which is not selfish, anything that you do which is, when they say do the right thing, that is dharma. So we are a dharmic civilization. So if you're talking about tradition, that is our tradition. And that is an enduring tradition. It never dies out.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Okay, but we have to listen to the younger generation also. Sometimes modifies needed. I think so, as he told, okay, we have to carry on our tradition, but some changes and some little bit, what is called transformation should be needed there. Thank you so much, Priya ma'am. Thank you so much, Vaishali ma'am. We had a wonderful session today. I hope you all audience had got insightful, meaningful session, and we hope you all enjoyed the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, I would like to ask Priya ma'am to felicitate our moderator and our speakers. Thank you, ma'am, for voluntarily coming over.
And imagination for young and curious minds. This session titled Story for Young and Curious Minds brings together distinguished voices from literature, film, history, and publishing to explore storytelling across genres, languages, and lived realities. Vishal Paul, filmmaker, political strategist, and debut novelist, navigates narratives that span fiction, documentary, and contemporary socio-political discourse. Shobha Tharu Srinivasan, an acclaimed author, poet, translator, and national award-winning voice artist, brings a deeply human and lyrical sensibility shaped by advocacy, creativity, and cross-generational writing. Adding historical and scholarly depth, Dr. Sanjay Alang, a senior IAS officer and eminent Hindi writer, poet, and historian, offers insights drawn from his extensive work on the culture, history, and tribal life of Chhattisgarh. Bridging an administration and literary scholarship, this session will be moderated by Lipika ma'am, award-winning publishing professional and founder of Market My Book, whose deep engagement with the publishing ecosystem ensures a thoughtful and well-grounded conversation on narrative, voice, and contemporary relevance. Please continue.
What's your name? Thank you, Utterna. Good evening, everyone. Namaskar. It's a session which is very close to my heart because I'm a mother of 2 children, 13 and 9. And I understand the aspect of, how important it is to engage with these young minds, to try and give them all the possible answers, sometimes very uncomfortable, to the questions that they come up with. But I also do realize that this very curiosity works as a compass for them to have developed their own worldview, for them to navigate this entire world around them. And I think we couldn't have had a better panel, a mix of panel for a session like this, because we have Bishal here, whose book, A Liar Among Us, takes us into the shadows of mystery. And it's set in a school in Shillong. We have Shobha. She doesn't need any introduction with the body of work that she has. She is someone who's been able to bring out the beauty of history and that of language through her books and writing. And she caters to that mind. She works with that mind very closely. And I will have quite a few questions for you on that. And then we have Dr. Alang. I think his latest book, which is on Down syndrome, is something which helps, which allows curiosity to bridge empathy. And, I think that is one aspect that I would definitely like to touch upon with him when we take this session forward. But let me begin with you, Shobha. From an Hindi alphabet, the kind of books that you write on words and, and to someone bringing out characters from history like Ravi Varma. What is it that you try to pull out in order to make it interesting and engaging for a child that age, especially when we are in a world where they are into this 15-minute content. They acquire 15 minutes of content, and the levels of distraction are very high. What is it that you keep in mind when you are designing something for them?
15 minutes are too long. Exactly.
A few seconds, yeah.
Is the mic on? It is. Thank you so much. That was. That's a rather large and interesting question, and one that's asked often. But first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming during your siesta hour to listen to us. I'm actually honored to be with 2 writers here whose work I have not encountered, but one of the great things about being at festivals is you get an opportunity to hear about the other kind of writing that others do. You have opportunities to converse, to learn, to improve and expand your worldview. So I'm very grateful. Thank you to Kalinga Literary Festival for having me here. This is my first time in Bhubaneswar. I definitely need to come back only because I haven't seen anything other than the Mayfair complex, and I'm running straight from here to the airport. So, you know, I did answer some of this in the morning, and I don't, forgive me for being repetitive. You're absolutely right. You know, I mean, I think what I'm trying to do in some ways is converge my own worldview and my own need to share with children, with the understanding that children, as you said today, are very bright, are very, I mean, like children were at all ages, I suppose, but they are exposed to and open to so many new ideas.
Much more informed.
And you cannot merely educate or instruct. You have to invite children to engage with your work. And so I have, if anything, one imperative that I have when I'm writing is how do I make the books inviting without it merely being something that's then forgotten. So my books, I'm hoping at every stage when you come back to it, there's something new to learn. And, you know, we had a fun session in the morning, this, forget, Dr. Sanjay Alang was in the audience, and we were chatting, and I'm very grateful that he recognized what I was saying about even picture books. And picture books usually, they're only, you know, 32 pages long, no more than 1,000 words, has to have illustrations on every page. And I've published two. You mentioned Indie Alphabet, that's why I'm saying picture books. Indie Alphabet was published in America, and it did well in that it won an award and all that. But it was published, you know, at $25 a book, and, you know, if you have to buy it in India, it was about 2,000 rupees, which is very hard to spend on a children's book. But luckily, a publisher is going to bring out a new Indie Alphabet. It'll come out this year. And I've made some changes because my idea was, I wrote it in America because I wanted Indian American children, as well as other children who had Indian Americans sitting in their classroom, to understand the magnificence of our subcontinent. And I made sure to travel from A to Z to, you know, going from the north to the south to the east to the west to the center area. And I wrote it in poetry with quatrains, so it was a 4-line poem. Going A to Z, we started with Agra. I didn't do all the popular places, but some of them you had to make it appealing to people there, the publishers. But I went to new places like Tura in Meghalaya that I had never heard of or visited. But I was able to research a little and write 4 lines of poetry. And then at the bottom of each page, I put in fun facts. So the idea was that, you know, in the beginning, your parent or a teacher or a friend or a sibling is reading to the child. Later on, the child will go, and because of the phonics, the sound of the words that they've heard, will go back and pick up the book again to discover more. And then even older, the fun facts will talk about, you know, we talk about Bombay and saying, or Bangalore being the Silicon Valley of India. You could go back and say, well, you know, what does that mean? And look up things. So there's little fun facts at the bottom. So the new book will also have these different interactive elements. Elements where you can do some more discovery. Elements where you can come back to the book to expose yourself to new ideas. So it's not static. And, you know, I have 3 books with me here because we talked about curiosity. There are 3 children's books that are in prose. But what's interesting is this one is the latest book, and it's called Let's Use Your Words. And it's by HarperCollins. I mean, they published it. It's by me, but HarperCollins published it. And it was interesting because when I first submitted the manuscript, the publisher said to me, is this a children's book or is this for adults? And I said, well, I thought it was a children's book. You know, they like to, for distribution purposes, want to put it down to a particular age group. So I said, no, it is. Then they said, well, but it's got poetry, it's got prose, it's got stories, it's got vocabulary, you know, what's going on? And I said, well, you keep telling me children have 15 minutes. I discover sometimes, you know, you may get them to read for 20 minutes. This is a book where you can read one section and put it down and read another section and put it down because it's not a full book of information. And so there's a certain fun in it. The continuity of theme is that it's all about words. And I put into it a little essay that I had written, which actually got published in the radio, meaning I had to go to a studio and record it in public TV because they liked the piece that I wrote. And it was great fun. I talk about I've loved words ever since I was a little girl, and I talk about a Calcutta schooling. And I was thinking, you know, if you love words, you know, words are so powerful, whether it's Obama, who came into the American consciousness because of his speech at the Democratic National Convention. He was not even that well known at the time. He truly wasn't. You know, yes, he was, I think he'd made it to a Senate seat, but that's about it. Just that incredible power of persuasion, of communication. I've always felt words do that. If you write poetry, the cadence, the mute beauty, the rhythm, the music in words, you know, it's something that stays with children. So whether it's the poetry that appeals to you, or the prose, or the meaning, or not, or even the joke. So there's, you know, little funny vocabulary tests with strange words that even I had to look up, and if you suddenly quiz me, I won't remember the meaning of all of them. In fact, I'm always worried somebody's going to quiz me on these words, because I looked them up and I put them in, because they're funny, they're hilarious, and kids love something funny. So it's a combination of all of that. It's my interest in wanting to give back, and as I said in the morning, so I'm repeating myself, it is something I say all the time. Children's writing is a huge privilege. You know, we have the opportunity to shape minds in some ways, to entertain, but also to inform. And these children who are reading are the ones who will one day be the stewards of the planet and the future leaders of tomorrow. What they read today is going to inform their thinking to some extent. So, you know, you can't take it lightly at all.
No, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it comes with a lot of responsibility as well.
Exactly, exactly.
Because as I said, and I started my conversation with the fact that I'm a mother of two, and I do completely understand, and I'm so glad that you've put everything in one book, because as a parent, I would definitely want my child to experience poetry as I would like him or her to experience prose, and you know, I think that's what will enrich not only their vocabulary but their worldview of things. Bishal, coming to you. You have written for a slightly older audience, and I think, you know, curiosity is something which is also embedded in the book, because there is this character, Angad, whose curiosity is dangerous. And since you're the youngest of the lot here on the panel, I would like to understand from you as to where do you think the young actually decide to draw a line, whether they at all decide to draw a line, and especially, you know, given the fact that you've encapsulated it very well in your novel.
Thank you for that question. Thank you everyone for joining us. You know, it's very interesting because I feel that with each generation, their idea of drawing a line keeps on changing, keeps on evolving. There's a lot of conversation around Gen Z. I think that's also older now. Now we have Gen Alpha. And yeah, like Gen Z is like quite older now, they're in the workforce. So the kind of characters that I have dealt with and the kind of environment that I have written on is more on the alpha side. And the interesting thing about them is the fact that they don't draw a line. I mean, it's so interesting because, you know, their ideas are constantly evolving. They don't stick to one particular notion of what
जो बच्चे हैं जो डिफरेंट हैं, उनमें कैसे एज अ पेरेंट किसी को टैकल करनी चाहिए, और उस क्यूरियोसिटी के मापदंड क्या हैं आपके एनालिसिस के हिसाब से?
For all specialists?
अभी हाँ अभी
नहीं, for all special type of the children?
जी जी जी, जो डिफरेंट हैं, जो स्पेशल चिल्ड्रन हैं, उनके लिए आप क्या सोचते हैं कि क्योंकि उनका माइंड एक और भी अलग तरीके से काम करता है, तो आप कैसे सोचते हैं कि एक बच्चा है जिसका व्यू ऑफ थिंग्स बहुत अलग है अपने ही उम्र के?
थैंक यू वेरी मच
जी,
लिपिका मैम एंड all the audience and my colleagues. स्पेशल बच्चों को जब हम स्पेशल कहते हैं तो वी लूज द स्पेशलिटी.
बिल्कुल नहीं, ट्रू.
ओके, मैं वो थोड़ा पीछे की तरफ से उत्तर दूंगा, ना कि सामने की तरफ से. तो हमने एक्सक्लूसिवनेस क्रिएट की इनके लिए, एक्सक्लूसिव स्कूल्स. तो एक्सक्लूसिव होते होते वो एक्सक्लूड हो गए. ओके, तो सबसे पहले प्लीज क्रिएट माइंडसेट कि एक्सक्लूसिवनेस इज डेंजरस. Okay, so the first word come in the mind is inclusion. Okay, so how we communicate to include them? Okay, when I call and you call them, and then it's create the difference. So first, the most important, डाउन सिंड्रोम, मानसिक मंदता के कई प्रकार हैं. डाउन सिंड्रोम, सेरेब्रल पॉल्सी एंड गो ऑन. डाउन सिंड्रोम इन पर्टिकुलर इज द कंडीशन जब आपको एक्स्ट्रा क्रोमोजोम बन जाता है. भगवान आपको ज्यादा इंटेलिजेंट करना चाहता है पर आपका शरीर उसको संभाल नहीं पाता. तो डाउन सिंड्रोम चाइल्ड इज ए नॉर्मल चाइल्ड फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, बट ही थिंक्स डिफरेंटली. लाइक डिस्लेक्सिया पीपल, किसने किसने देखी है? क्या नाम? ओके ओके, तो आइंस्टीन, टॉम क्रूज, एक क्रिकेट कैप्टन भी है अभी, मैं नाम भूल रहा हूं, दे ऑल आर डिस्लेक्सिया. तो डिस्लेक्सिया क्या होता है? जो किसी चीज को थोड़ा देर से, मैं थोड़ा समय लगेगा,
नहीं कोई बात नहीं,
थोड़ा देर से समझता है, या 6 और 9 को समझने में डिफरेंस होता है. और ऐसे आपको बहुत से दोस्त मिल जाएंगे जो खब्बे पासे के सज्जे पासे, मतलब राइट और हैंड बताने में थोड़ा घबरा जाते हैं,
2 सेकंड ज़्यादा लगाते हैं.
2 सेकंड ज़्यादा लगाते हैं.
जी.
तो अगर हमारा डिस्लेक्सिया का टेस्ट हो तो 2-4 हमारे बीच में से अभी निकल आएंगे. अभी निकल जाएंगे. तो अभी हाई कोर्ट ने और गवर्नमेंट ने डिसीजन लिया है कि जो प्रूवन डिस्लेक्सिया है उसको आधा घंटा समय एग्जाम में एक्स्ट्रा देंगे. दे आर क्वाइट इंटेलिजेंट, दे आर एवरीथिंग इज ओके, बस उनको आधा घंटा एक्स्ट्रा चाहिए क्योंकि थोड़ा सा समय लगता है. तो जो डाउन सिंड्रोम बच्चा है वो सैम्बल्स को, लोगों को बहुत जल्दी कैच करता है. तो जैसे कोका कोला को लोगो या किसी चीज को, तो वो देखते ही बोलेगा कोका कोला कोका कोला कोका कोला।
बेसिकली विजुअल्स ज़्यादा
विजुअल्स
जल्दी
ज़्यादा, वो
capture
इनकी बुक पे ही तो आ रहा है।
जी 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 जी।
और इट इज़ वेरी डिफिकल्ट फॉर हिम और हर टू कैच द लैंग्वेज और द वर्ड्स। ओके, तो थोड़ा सा मेथड बस बदलने से आप उसको सब कुछ सिखा सकते हो। सब कुछ मतलब सब कुछ। डांस भी, ही इज स्लो लर्नर। तो अब आपको सबसे अधिक क्या चाहिए? वही चीज जो अब मानवीय गुण के रूप में सबसे कम होता जा रहा है, दैट इज पेशेंस। दैट इज पेशेंस। तो दिस इज वन साइड। एंड सेकंड वन, अब लिपिका मैम ने एक बहुत ही अलग टाइप का क्वेश्चन किया, टू ऑल एंड टू कम्युनिकेट विद द PWDs, पर्सन विद डिसेबिलिटीज, the most difficult is deaf and dumb. You can communicate with the blind people, you communicate with any type of the PWDs, but you cannot communicate with the PWDs with the deaf and dumb. They never heard any word, so that they never recognize any lip reading and anything. That's why the sign language आई। मेरी जो पत्नी हैं वो एक अच्छी ख्यातनाम पेंटर हैं, फाइन आर्ट पेंटिंग है, तो उनकी पेंटिंग बिकती हैं, प्रदर्शनी होती है। 1 साल पहले हर चीज़ की जब आप कुछ ज़्यादा चढ़ जाते हो तो फिर आपको लगता है कि कुछ और करना चाहिए, तो अचानक वो एक डेफ एंड डम बालक के संपर्क में आई। देन उनका पूरा माइंडसेट ही स्विच ओवर हो गया। देन शी शिफ्टेड टू डू पेंटिंग्स विद देम, और फिर उनको सिखाना उसके लिए बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज हो गया, क्योंकि लाल रंग लगाओ तक समझाना उसने बताया कठिन है। फिर उन्होंने साइन लैंग्वेज सीखी और ये सब किया। तो अब इंक्लूजन पे आता हूँ मैं। तो इंक्लूजन कहाँ कहाँ न्यूनतम? फर्स्ट इन द सोसाइटी, एंड इट्स स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम होम। इट्स स्टार्ट फ्रॉम होम। और अगर मैं आपको उदाहरण देने लग जाऊं बहुत सारे कि कैसे होम में उनकी हालत खस्ता हो जाती है, लगभग हर स्लो माइंड वाले को पागल बोल देते हैं, जबकि वो होता नहीं है। ये मैं आपको एंश्योर कर रहा हूँ। आपके पागल बोलने से वो इरिटेट होता है, फिर रिएक्ट करता है। तो आप उसको चिढ़ा के रिएक्ट करते हो। देन इंक्लूजन इन सोसाइटी मीन्स इंक्लूजन इन स्कूल। तो जब आप स्कूल में इंक्लूड करोगे तो आपको अपने आप पता चल जाएगा कि थोड़ा पेशेंस से आगे बढ़ना है, उनके साथ चलो तो थोड़ा धीरे चलना है, उनसे थोड़ा स्लो बात करनी है। तो आप आगे जाके पीछे मुड़ के नहीं देखोगे कि अरे अभी तक तू नहीं आया। फिर उनके साथ चलने की आदत पड़ जाएगी। वो आदत तब तक नहीं पड़ेगी जब तक आप इंक्लूजन नहीं करोगे। जब शादी होती है तो आप पत्नी को इंक्लूड करते हो और पत्नी आपको इंक्लूड करती हो, तो दोनों एक दूसरे को समझते हैं। बस उतनी सी चीज उसमें चाहिए, बस उतनी सी चीज उसमें चाहिए। तो इंक्लूजन इज द वन पार्ट इन सोसाइटी। नंबर 2, एक्सेसिबिलिटी। जैसे आप कोई व्हील चेयर में बैठा हो तो इस सेमिनार में आ ही नहीं सकता। हम उसके लिए कितना भी कर लें वो चढ़ ही नहीं सकता। दिस बिल्डिंग इज नॉट एक्सेसिबल, द रोड इज नॉट एक्सेसिबल, द क्रॉसिंग फॉर ए ओल्ड पर्सन इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू दिस रोड। तो एक्सेसिबिलिटी एज ए थ्योरी एंड एज ए प्रैक्टिकल अभी हमारे माइंडसेट में आई नहीं है। तो किसी को एक्सेसिबिलिटी दोगे तभी वो इंक्लूड हो पाएगा। अगर आप एक्सेसिबिलिटी नहीं दोगे तो इंक्लूड हो ही नहीं सकता, हो ही नहीं सकता, यानी किसी भी हालत में नहीं हो सकता। तो ये दोनों तरफ की बात हुई। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि अगर, और वो नॉवेल जो मैंने लिखी है जिसका मैम ने जिक्र किया, तो उसका शीर्षक मैं बहुत दिनों तक खोजता रहा। मेरे को उपन्यास लिखने से ज़्यादा उसके टाइटल के लिए बहुत मेरे को लगा कि मैं कैसे करूं, तो फिर मैंने उसका शीर्षक रखा चलो साथ चलें। दैट इज इंक्लूजन, दैट इज इंक्लूजन। तो कोई भी सोसाइटी किसी को भी पीछे छोड़ के आगे नहीं बढ़ सकती, फिर चाहे वो महिला हो, फिर चाहे वो बुजुर्ग हो, चाहे वो बच्चे हों, और वर्नेबल पार्टीज, द ऑल वुमेन, द ऑल चिल्ड्रन एंड ऑल PWD। तो आई थिंक you will be must be convince yourself that you must be inclusive and accessible to all. Thank you very much.
Beautifully put. Dr. Alang, you made a very strong point actually. The part where you talked about inclusiveness and accessibility being very important even for children or people who have slightly a heightened sense of curiosity but may not be as fast to pick things up. Shobha, you've worked, and because he mentioned picture books, you know, and because you live and work between the US and India, it's not just about PWD children, I mean people with disabilities, but it is also about the difference that comes because of the cultural upbringing of children. How do you view your stories being perceived by children from different continents, you know, even though they are of the same age, but still, how do you view them? How do you?
That's a very interesting question. Nobody's really asked that. You know, part of the problem with the whole distribution market and publishing these days is that you imagine when you sign a contract with a large publishing house that the books are going to be easily available in the Western world. When I published in America, and it was with small boutique presses, they give you some money and then they sort of go away and you're supposed to sell it yourself, which doesn't really happen. I knew that there was a limited market. But here, I mean, I've had the good fortune of being published by HarperCollins and Penguin and Aleph and Westland and, you know, just superb publishers, and they all supposedly have incredible distribution markets. Yet, to get my books there is not as easy. Yes, people buy through Amazon, but the bookshops, it's true that some of the books are available, but not all of them and not as easily. I have been asked this morning, somebody said when you wrote Parvati, the Elephant's Very Important Day, did you think it was very limited to, you know, to Kerala children? And I said, absolutely not. I never have that kind of a thinking, because the idea is we're all part of a shared planet. We're all part of the same world, and our sensibilities, our responses, the curiosity of a child, whether it's in America or here, is exactly the same. As Bhanu Mushtaq said in her Booker Prize-winning speech, she said a line, and I'm probably misquoting it because I'm not good at remembering lines anymore, but she essentially said a story conceived under a tree in a Kannada village has now cast a shadow across this international audience. And that is exactly what it is, because, you know, the worries of something or other, or the, you know, the fear of an elephant, it can resonate across the world. But I've been thinking of his disability story so much because I worked for 20 years with people with disabilities before I started writing. And when I worked, I wasn't providing the services. I was providing the stories so that funders like Department of Rehabilitation, Department of Education, in America there is that. We passed the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1991. And as a result of it, any building that serves more than 50 people will be fined if they don't have an accessible entrance. Bathrooms have to be wide enough so a wheelchair can go in. It's been a long, long time in India that we haven't seen these changes. And somebody like you in your power, or these stories, these books, are so important because, you know, as he said, a person with a disability is someone who can live like you and me if some of these accessibility opportunities are given. So if you have even an accessible tool to reach something, it is easily done. You don't have to be dependent. I worked for what was called an independent living center. And that doesn't mean that they're living independently. It means that if you provide the resources, they could live independently. And that was the sort of mission of the organization. So if we keep that kind of large world view, even what he said, and even what I'm writing, I think there's no limitation to the audience of what, you know, of the books that we present. It's open to everyone. As our former speaker said, even if you give somebody half an hour extra and you're dyslexics usually transpose their letters. Like you said, 6 and 9, the A and B and the D and all those things gets confused. In America, for instance, they are giving that extra time to finish their exams. Of course, both in India and in the West or anywhere, everybody is taking advantage. They're getting their children diagnosed as dyslexic just so they can get extra time in an exam. Now, if you're going to do things like that, it's a problem. But we have to hope people don't do that. Oh, wow. Okay. There you are.
One thing common I find in such people is that they are extremely creative. Their creative output is at a different level. I mean, it's quite exciting to see, Right. Vishal, I would like to bring you here because, I think as Shobha mentioned that, a story set in Kerala or a story, as Bhanu said, set in, Karnataka under a tree. You have set your story in one of these, the small town in Northeast. Northeast is now, there are conversations about how, it needs to be connected with the mainstream India, and they still continue to face, a lot of discrimination, and very recently we had an unfortunate incident as well. But when you speak to your readers, and what kind of response do you get? Is it a very romantic picture that they had of the Northeast, which you, in some way, your writing has kind of disseminated for them? Or is it something that you feel they've been yearning to know, they'd had no clue of? Especially because what you've used as a story is it's a suspense, it's a thriller, it's fear that you have instilled in it. What kind of response do you usually get when you are, exposing your reader to, so to say, an unknown terrain, both in terms of the region as well as in terms of the kind of story you've woven?
So when I was conceiving the idea, it was an independent idea. It was not really based in a particular place. But I constantly felt that there's something missing, right? It felt like a generic story. There are so many similar kind of stories. And then I was on a constant lookout to give it like an edge. And then I realized that, all of us from the Northeast. So the interesting part about Northeast is the fact that just how we have a lot of communities and, caste in the rest of the country. There are a lot of tribes, right? And a lot of the tribes that exist in Northeast India, interestingly, they don't have a script of their own. Like many of them do, but not most of them, right? As a result of which, their stories are oral, right? And that's why folklore plays such an important part of who we are, what our traditions are, what our identity generally is, right? So I realized that if me being from Northeast India, if I'm not telling the stories of Northeast, if I'm not bringing Northeast India into the spotlight, then, what is the point of even telling stories? So that's why then I decided to set the story in Sikkim. I created a fictional town because it gave me a lot more liberty to play around. But it is quintessential Northeast, and I'm very grateful to social media for that, because earlier we were quite cut off from the mainland. Like, not many people knew about us, let alone our stories and traditions and so many other things. But now people are very curious, because social media is flooded with so many reels of Assam, Mizoram, Nagaland. People are going to different parts of Nagaland, experiencing their cuisine, and so many other aspects of our lives. And I think when I visit so many universities and schools and colleges, they all are very curious to know more about Northeast India, and they keep mentioning that we want to visit, they want suggestions. So I feel very liberated, I feel very happy. And initially I was a little skeptical whether it will connect with people or not, but thankfully it has. And now I cannot wait to tell more and more stories from Northeast India.
I mean, I've been given a slip to conclude the session, so probably I'll just pose one single question to all of you and request you to maybe try and address that. And that would be about how do you view, and because you have a rich body of work, Shobha, and you've just about started writing for the young, and Alangji writes poetry, and poets have a different way to express what's happening around their world, around in the world. But how do you view the youth, the younger people, going forward in terms of expressing themselves, creating their own opinions and expressing themselves? And how much of a role will literature, do you think, continue to play, given the fact that most of the publishers usually complain of people reading less? So, I mean, barring that, it is a fact that, you know, they have alternate mediums to get information from. How, probably I'll ask you to start, Bishal, and then maybe Shobha, and then we'll end with Dr. Alam.
Yes, partially it might be true that people are reading less. But if you look at data, hard data, then there is a positive growth of some 8 to 10%, right? The only difference is that 90% people are reading 10% authors. And for that, a lot of, we need more people like Lipika because we need a lot more promotion of our books, right? Which publishers themselves aren't able to do. But I sincerely believe that literature plays a very important role because literature as a medium is not just restricted to books. Because when you write a book, it also gets adapted to so many other mediums, right? Films are made on it, shows are made on it, there are plays which are made on books, right? So books, literature have a much more larger shelf life. And I personally blame the millennials, okay, for this declining trend of reading because they were the ones who decided to give the iPad to their kid when it became inconvenient. And that's the reason why a long generation of people grew up without reading. And I think that is changing now. Parents are much more conscious. Everyone has realized the perils of technology. So now I think also thanks to all these book clubs that have come up in so many cities, that reading has suddenly become cool. And having conversation around books have become cool because of book talk and book influencers and social media. So I think the future is bright. I look at it in a very much more optimistic manner. Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. I was talking to a couple of publishers, run into all these people when you're in festivals. And what's interesting is they're all bringing 200 to 300 books out every year. And I'm wondering, who are these people who are reading these books then? And the publishers are always saying that they're very lean, they no longer have as large a marketing budget, they don't have this, they don't have that, they're working at 10% capacity because people are not reading or buying books, but yet they're bringing out 200 to 300 books. So especially in the children's writing sphere, sometimes, I'm meeting so many talented writers, just exceptional. There's room for all of us there, and children have such a variety to pick from. So it's all out there. It's just a question of having access. But what he said is very true, that I think there is a resurgence of reading, because when I go into classrooms, and I don't think it's just me, it's just when I go in as a writer, everybody standing in line for a book wants to get an autograph. You feel like a rock star in these schools, and you're thinking, for a writer to feel that way is a very good feeling. So children are getting interested, and maybe it could be because we have all these Bollywood stars now endorsing books. Sometimes, like if Oprah Winfrey endorses your book in America, that's it, you're set. Yeah. Obama has a list, and now who else? I'm sure there are others also with lists here. I think Twinkle Khanna and all these people have. Right, so it's helping. I'm hoping that it will continue to help.
As Vishal said, lore, folk parampara of Northeast. That is important to record that also. The reading is no doubt increasing in a good way. And they recently, the Penguin organized this festival for the review of the books. That also created young people to learn the book and write a review on that book, and they given a prize for that. 3 people, I think, na?
They ran a competition.
Yes. Yes, Bhubaneswar, yesterday.
All over India.
Just before your session.
They announced it yesterday here.
I think they given, and अचानक से सभी बड़े पब्लिशर लिट फेस्ट आयोजित कर रहे हैं. This shows कि they are getting people, students and the readers in their campus or in their festival, and they are coming and buying the book. And the books, reading and buying, both are increasing. It's also increasing due to the education, the increase of education in the society, and little awareness. The people who depend on the WhatsApp and all that type of substitute media, now they realize that reading book is the only way to learn anything. मेरी जिस तरह की जॉब रही है उसमें बहुत सारे लोगों से मिलना जुलना रहता है जी। एक किसी ने बोला, जो लोग प्रवचन करते हैं या मेरे से बोला कि यार आजकल लोग पढ़ने लग गए।
Well, since I have to wrap up, just two quick things, because that's coming from the marketing perspective and having been in publishing for the last 19 years. I feel, one, definitely, I think the reading culture is growing. It's just that we don't want to accept as publishers that it is, and we are not directing our energies to the right spaces. Especially because, as Dr. Allang said, you know, the education and the need to be seen and need to read in English, especially in the English language, has increased in tier 2 cities. So definitely there's a growing market which we need to tap into. But as for writers, I'm so glad that we have writers here on this platform who are, you know, bringing out stories from their own regions and their lived experiences. And I feel so delighted to see more and more such voices, you know, more and more writers actually telling stories from, right from Kashmir to down south Kanyakumari to, you know, Gujarat to the northeast. And it's such a rich repository of stories, of the oral traditions that are finally, you know, finding their way into books. And I hope that all these books find their ways into the homes of parents, especially the books that are written for children, because as a child when I was growing up, it was an important part of my upbringing. You know, my dad used to ensure that we read, and he used to refer books to us, and he never imposed them on us. It was such a natural transition into reading. But which somewhere, I mean, I don't know which generation now I fall in, but I'm not the millennial. I think I was born much before that. But I think which somewhere we did lose out on, and I do hope and pray that, you know, we have a generation of readers again, you know, because especially from the country that we belong from, it's a rich culture that we need to.
Parents here, if I may just say that, you know, there isn't, when they say my children don't like to read, I think there is something beyond the classroom. I mean, school books is one thing, but if children want to read graphic novels, even if they're starting out with comic books, or they want to read about their favorite sports star, it's fine. You should let them do that, so the habit of reading is built. You know, absolutely, you don't need to curate every book that the child reads. If they want to read about Sachin Tendulkar because they like cricket, that's absolutely fine. You see, because they get into the habit of reading, then they look for something else. We love reading. It's so hard for me to believe people don't want to read.
No, but thank you so much for being a patient audience. I would have opened the floor for questions, but I would request maybe Shobhaji to and the other panelists to stay back for 5-10 minutes and have one-on-one conversation, since we have to go on to the next session. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kalinga, Rashmi ji, and Ashok sir for inviting me here, and thank you all.
Thank you, panelists, to share a profound perspective with all of us. Now, I would like to call Shobha ma'am to felicitate other panelist members.
we do this even for special birthdays when somebody's older and don't we?
एक और दे देते
A very warm evening to all the ladies and gentlemen present over here. We have reached the final chapter of an incredible day. To bring us home, we have a session that looks forward to the future. New voices, new books. It's time to celebrate the fresh perspectives and gatekeepers shaping the next generation of literature. We have our panel. Please welcome our panel of trailblazers. Durva Devashi ma'am, author of the evocative debut, The Fantastic Affair of the Despair. Sonali Prasad ma'am, an award-winning TED fellow and environmental storyteller. Kanish Gupta sir, of the founder of Writer's Side and one of the South Asia's most influential literary agents. And of course, with them, Anish Chandi sir, founder of the Labyrinth Literary Agency and a pioneer in the content development. Moderating this powerhouse group is the distinguished Jatin sir, a renowned translator, scholar, and winner of the Hutch Crossword Book Prize. Professor Nayak has spent a lifetime nurturing the literary arts. We have 30 minutes for the session. Sir, the stage is yours.
So, I extend to you all a very warm welcome to this late afternoon session. A very tiring day for all of us, but we have a very distinguished panel. And one of the chief objectives of this festival is to elevate new voices, of course, new voices and new books. So my task is very simple. I'll simply invite the distinguished panelists, one after the other, to speak on their books and the latest publications, whatever they have been doing recently. So without much ado, without wasting your time, I would begin with Durba Devasi ji. Please talk.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming here. I'm Durva. My book is called The Fantastic Affair of Despair. I hope it's not as despairing to read as it sounds. The idea of that book came around to me around 3 years ago, and it started very simply that there's a lot of stories about men chasing a beast. There's The Old Man and the Sea, there's Moby Dick, and obviously I wouldn't compare my book to these books, but I felt like women might, in a lot of circumstances, might have a lot more reason to chase after beasts which are either metaphorical or fantastical in nature. And that is what the book is about. There is an unnamed woman. She is unnamed because she is kind of, she's lost in her story, so she doesn't have a name. And she goes through 3 paths of her life, and these 3 paths, they take her from one place to another. Ultimately, she's chasing after beasts that she cannot have. And it takes us from an office to the Himalayas to the Valley of Flowers. So it's a very, there's a lot of characters. You meet a lot of different people. Some are good, some are bad. There's a lot of different, especially if you like traveling, those elements are also there. So yeah, I mean, that is what The Fantastic Affair of Despair is about.
Well, thank you for introducing your new book, and the way you describe it, it's clear that it's a gripping narrative, and I'm sure some of the members of the audience and all of us would like to go through it. Now, may I invite Sonali Prasad ji to talk about her book.
Thank you. I see a few familiar faces because I've been in this room before. So my novel is called Class Bottom,
and it's about two mother-daughter pairs who live on the coast. It's their journey through ecological and social ruptures. There is no one rupture that kind of unravels the narrative of the book. It's about the continuous chipping of the female body and regeneration of the female body through the book. A lot of people ask me like why the book is named Glass Bottom. It's such an abstract name. When the book first came out, I was telling the story earlier, my mother put that name in Amazon, and the only thing that used to come out was bartan, cutlery, you know, kaanch ka, katora and all. So it's very abstract. It actually helped me because I probably reach more people who are actually looking for utensils for their kitchen. But Glass Bottom is that boat that you see in the Andamans, which you go out if you ever go to the reefs. And it allows you to access the reef, to look at the reef and the sea life while sitting on the boat. So the concept is of the mirror image that folds into you. So when you're dealing with a rupture that's very colossal or overwhelming, such as climate, you need sometimes to look at the mirror image of it because you can't look at it directly, you can't cope with it directly. And so the mirror image is the female body in the book at different stages. So you have a little child named Himo, and you have the mothers, Luni and Gul. And there's Earth, who's the other daughter, and she kind of embodies the collective consciousness of the planet. That's quite clear with her name, Earth, A-R-T-H. Phonetically, it, you know, gives an homage to the planet. But Earth also means meaning. So she looks at her undoing as anarth, which is devastation, catastrophe, right? Excavation as well. So a lot of these characters, through their existence, talk about erosion, extraction, regeneration through the various stages of rupture in India. Yeah.
Thank you for that fascinating summary of your... Yeah, I know that. I know that. Yeah. Now I'll invite Anish ji, since you have established Labyrinth Literary Agency and you must be promoting new voices, you must be encouraging young writers and fledgling writers to make their voices heard. So please tell us something about your agency, about the way you have promoted young new voices in literature.
So as a firm, we tend to gravitate towards certain genres. I'd love to do all genres, but genres that we mostly do would be non-fiction, investigative journalism, scams, military books. We'll do the odd horror sort of a novel. We tend to not do too many translations, barely any. Some commercial fiction, a lot of business books, self-help. Those are basically the genres that we operate in. We also adapt a lot of books to screen. So we are constantly working with various producers, directors, actors, OTT platforms, all of that. There's been one interesting development which hopefully will pan out this year, where we'll produce our first movie. Again, sort of fingers crossed. If that works out, then because there's been a sort of a shift in the way books are being adapted to film, if that works out, then I'd hope to possibly even acquire books even from my friend Kanishk here to sort of take it to screen. So those are the sort of areas in general that we work in. We work with both established authors, new authors. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Anish ji, for talking about the trends in publishing. And this is a very important subject for all of us, because there are many aspiring young writers, maybe in the audience and outside. So we have a very distinguished literary agent, Mr. Kanishk Gupta, with us. He's very famous as a literary agent. And we would like to hear his thoughts on emerging trends in the publishing world and how the young can benefit from understanding and appreciating and making sense of those trends. Thank you.
So, you know, one of the reasons I started Writer's Site is because I found it very hard to get any kind of access to publishing professionals. When I wrote my first book, and this was like in 2008 or 9, we had 2 or 3 publishing houses. There were no literary festival. There were no lit marts at some of the festivals where, you know, promising writers are allowed to pitch their works to, you know, agents and publishers, and the shortlisted works, you know, they are like taken very seriously by the publishing houses. So because of my own struggles as a first-time writer, who was completely in the dark, who had no support system, I tend to like focus on new writing, debut writing, and especially debut fiction. But of late, I've seen that there is very little appetite for like new writing in certain genres, especially like literary fiction, commercial fiction. You'll be surprised to know that new commercial fiction is harder to sell than new literary fiction, because I think the commercial fiction market has been monopolized by like a few set of writers, and there's a very small set of successful commercial writers, and they don't get any access, you know, to in the UK, US, because I think the quality of commercial writing in the UK, US is very developed. And I feel that as an agency, we have always been very democratic. We have always been open to genres. So I look at all genres. Anis focuses on specific genres, and he's very good at it. But we are open to all genres, because if you want the agency model to work in India, you cannot afford to be you know, focusing on a few genres. You know, in the UK, US, there are agencies specializing in fantasy, romance, non-fiction, even like sub-genres. But in India, we need to be open to genres. And I mean, in fact, I will even do academic books. You know, if I feel that the author who has written that book has a potential to do a mainstream, you know, work of non-fiction history writing. What is working right now is non-fiction. What is working right now is our business books, because they are also like commercially viable for the publisher, because the business organizations or the writer is in a position to buy back copies. Sometimes even if the book is has a lot of merit, and if the publisher wants to take it on, you know, the corporate has to buy back copies, you know, so they end up covering the costs for the publishers. What is working is like books by these like swamis and gurus, because they have such a huge following that most of the books are consumed by the followers. And you know, like Instagram celebrities. I mean, there is a market for literary fiction, but what troubles me is that I mean, the hype and the reviews do not lead to like sales. We have a completely broken award system in India. The 1 or 2 prizes that really mattered have shut down. JCB prize shut down. DSC prize, which was incredible because it was open to writings from South Asia, has shut down. Like I mean, it has discovered writers like Shehan Karnatilaka, you know, Cyrus Mistry, Jamil Ahmad, who wrote Wandering Falcon. I think he also won the DSC prize. Shakti Bhatt prize has shut down. I mean, I'm happy that, you know, like festivals have started inviting, like festivals like Kalinga have started inviting, you know, new debut writers, but it's very difficult for debut writers to get any sort of a platform at the major festivals unless, you know, you have connections or, you know, like direct access to the directors and some of the big festivals. Yeah, and I mean, for aspiring writers, I'm going to give the same advice that I've been giving all along, that, you know, just don't be in a hurry to publish. Don't work on your book. Ask yourself that, why are you writing this book? Does this story have a, you know, universal resonance? I mean, during COVID, I was getting like so many submissions for people who are writing their COVID memoir, like, and fictionalizing their COVID memoir. UK, US markets are very, very tough. I mean, I'm struggling despite having worked with 2 or 3 Booker winners, a Booker shortlisted author. Those markets are very tough. And I also feel that the editors in the UK, US respond to the text, you know. They are not responding to the stature of the author. They are not responding to what the author has won in the past. So like, even after, you know, Daisy's win for Tomb of Sand, when I went to the Frankfurt Book Fair, publishers, I mean, when they saw Daisy's catalog, you know, like of work, you know, and she's been translating for so many years, they want to like send me everything. We are going to make a multi-book offer. No, they asked for 1 or 2 specific things. Many of them said no to that. So they are looking at what appeals to them, what they will be able to like confidently sell in those markets. and what is going to like travel to a different region, readership, different sensibility. I have had no success selling a Kannada book after Heartlamp, so nothing has changed. I mean, even in India, I have not been able to sell a short story collection to Penguin India, who published Heartlamp. So I'm saying that these things take time. There's a huge interest in global South Asian literature, but it's not, things are not going to change overnight. I have a different experience of like OTT than Anish, because he's a very seasoned player in that space. But I just feel that I just find that whole system to be like very unprofessional, Yeah, so there was a time when I used to go to like Bombay 6 times a year, carrying books in like suitcases, gifting like books to like not just OTT platforms and producers, but also like to screenwriters, directors, actors who are transitioning to producing. But I think the success rate is very, very small, I mean, even if like 100 books get optioned, maybe like 4 or 5 will get made into a film or a series. So after a while, I kind of lost interest. And I also feel they don't read. Many of them are not readers. So they expect the agent and the agent's representative to do all the work. In future, I think it's going to be even harder for new writers, literary fiction writers, to find traditional publishing offers, even in India. Publishers are cutting down their translations list, so, I mean, because they feel that if they publish too many books in a year, then the marketing team is not going to be able to promote their books, because the marketing teams are also working across genres, and sometimes, you end up working with a very, very major writer, legacy author, and along with 2 or 3 new books. So it's going to be very, very difficult, for writers to find, traditional deals with, like the big 5 publishers. But I'm glad that there is the self-publishing ecosystem, and we've had like so many self-publishing success stories out of India, not the kinds we've had in the UK, US, but if you look at Savi Sharma or even Amish Tripathi was like hybrid. It was not self-publishing, but he teamed up with his then agent Anish Chandy. Anuj Bhari. Oh no, his then agent Kanishka, who just kidding. Then agent Anuj Bhari, and then they tied up with a very major distributor, Prakash Books, who's like responsible for distributing most books by most of the top publishing houses. I think European languages and foreign languages follow the trends in the UK, US. So if there's a lot of noise about a debut author, and if there's like a bidding war in the US, UK for an author, then Europe wakes up, other markets wake up. Scouts who are scouting on behalf of European publishers and other publishers, foreign language publishers wake up. It's very, very difficult to sell a book in a foreign language, if it's not made like a lot of noise in the UK, US. And the first thing that agents are going to ask you, or scouts are going to ask you, when is the UK edition out? Who is the US publisher? So it's complicated.
I'll just add one more point. Though you gave a brilliant explanation of the landscape, very accurate, is how retail works in India. The retail store network in India is completely broken. It's not entirely their fault. Everyone has messed this up very royally. First of all, the consumer is eventually going to buy a book at the lowest possible price that is available to them. And that typically is our e-commerce platforms. This was a deal that was done long time ago, where e-commerce was allowed to discount books. This is not the case in many European countries, where discounting of books, because books are treated as a cultural artifact there, is protected. Then our land rates, because of the amount of black money that is there in India, our land rates are very, very expensive. So, and book retail needs to be on Main Street. It can't be hidden away somewhere. It needs to be in prime markets. So their rentals are super high. Now, to offset these costs, the only way they can do it is by shifting the burden to the publisher. So now we are in a situation where if the MRP of a book is 100 rupees, almost 57 to 60 rupees is going to go to retail. And this is not what they call firm sale. This is sale or return, which means they will hold on to it for 6 months, 3 months, whatever. And if it doesn't sell, or whatever doesn't sell, they're going to send it back to the publisher. And then accounts are reconciled after 180 days, eventually. So this system is completely broken, where even if a book does well, the publisher is going to make money after a very, very long time. And most young authors or people who want a book deal, they're very frustrated that publishers don't respond to them, and they're only going after talent that has a built-in social media network or whatever. But it's kind of hard to blame them, where this cash recovery cycle is so bad, you know. And we have one of the lowest bookstore to population ratios in the world. So though people can virtue signal on social media saying, I wish there were independent bookstores in India like they are in New York and London, those same people are buying books on e-commerce websites. And then if your books are only available on e-commerce, then all you're going to see is a thumbnail. People are not going to click on every thumbnail and then read the blurb and then make that decision. So if they like the cover, they might, otherwise they may not. And then Amazon, to kind of take it one level further, they have started this thing called Amazon Marketing Services, where you can bid for keywords. And at some point you might have to bid for the keyword of your own like book title for it to show up. So because of these structural issues, we are in a situation where nobody is really sure how to proceed.
Yeah, so I had a question for the two of you. Your experience, like finding a publisher. And Sonali, if I'm not mistaken, you are represented by an international agent. And also like the kind of form that you used, you chose to write your first book because it's genre bending, there's poetry, and there's a lot of, it's not an easy novel. And you are not clearly writing a thriller or a plot-driven book. So just want to know because you've had first-hand experience with UK international publishers via your agent, and also about your experience, like it'll be good to know, for aspiring writers to know from debut novelists.
So in a lot of ways, I got lucky. My editor, Isha Banerjee, she was reading my journalism and my nonfiction for a long time, and she reached out to me while I was writing the book. And I had something of a skeleton, like 16,000 words, to show her at that time. And it was genre bending then as well, and she was really interested in the ambition of the book in the ecological space, because there's only a certain kind of writing that prevails in the ecological genre. And I was trying to do something new, and I was very clear that this is what I'm trying to do, because journalism is where I follow the template of the newspaper that I'm working for, whether it's Washington Post or The Guardian. So fiction was something where I really wanted to experiment. And the same with the agent. My agent, Kate, she was a recommendation from one of my peers at MIT. We had a writing group. We used to write chapters after hours. And the expectation from me was for nonfiction, because I have, 10 years. And I just, out of a whim, started writing fiction, and my peers said, oh, you really need to give this a try, see what comes out of it. And they shared their agent, who was Kate. And Kate saw my work, and she said yes.
She saw the full manuscript.
She saw the
and
full.
What is the kind of feedback that you got from UK editors?
They said the book was really painful in terms of the grief or the trauma that each character embodies. It has been a roller coaster for this book, because this book doesn't sit in any genre. You'll find it in drama in one bookshop, you'll find it in poetry in one bookshop, and you'll find it near the plates in one bookshop because of the title. They're the cutlery section, as I was joking about. So it doesn't sit very neatly in one category, and that of course affects maybe the sales of the book, if you look at it practically. But I have over time, I found a way to make this book matter to the folks that I think would be the appropriate readers. So, of course, we are both Picador authors, so our teams do what they have to do. But then I knew that this book merits discourse from not just the audience that goes to the bookshops. It needs to be talked about in other circles. So I took this to law school, and we did a seminar on fiction, law, and justice. I've taken it to business school. Amity. Of course, we've gone to Yadavpur University, and this is just by me reaching out to the student union president, or them reaching out to me saying, let's do something. And then they go by the book if they like what I have to talk about. So the idea, because it's my first book, for me was to create community and discourse, because I'm a completely new entry in this world in India, right? So I find that there is some peace in knowing that, okay, law school opened their gates, business school opened the gates. There was a doctor who was a moderator for me in Bangalore, in Ata Galata, and there's a doctor in the book. So the medical faculty talked about palliative care, end-of-life care as an analogy to climate catastrophe. What do you do when the end is nigh and you can't fix it? How does care look like then? So I think what we as writers expect from the book also changes along the way. And for Glass Bottom, if new people come to it with their lived experience, and we can bring reading into spheres where, you know, you don't think people are typically reading, like the engineers, I think I'll be happy to some extent. But it's an uphill task. And the second book also, it looks like it's a jungle for the second book again, because you have to try again, you have to do something again, you have to be true to yourself, but understand that the journey is not going to be easy if you do a genre-bending book.
So can we have a brief comment from Devarsiji on your experience with the publishing world?
Yeah. I think I just got really lucky in that sense that I didn't come from a literature background. I studied dentistry, and then I went and worked for Mehta Kapoor, who is also a literary agent. And so I had a basic idea of who does what and who to approach and what a pitch looks like. And so I knew exactly how to do all of these things. And when I wrote the book, I just, directly reached out to the publishers. And I think Teesta, who was the person who first read the book and took this on, she was happy with it, so she took it on. But I think that is another thing that these small things, that who to approach, how to write a pitch. A lot of young aspiring authors, they don't even know this. They're completely lost in that thing, and so this is quite new to them as well.
So can we take a couple of quick questions before we bring this session to an end? Okay.
My question is to Kanishka and Amish both that how do you rate a book when you select a book, whether its potential to sell number of books or the content in it, or maybe the author, the stature of the author, or what do you consider important for you?
I think it's a combination of everything. Like for fiction, it has to, I can't explain why a work of fiction, especially literary fiction, would appeal to me, but it has to have all the good qualities that a work of literary fiction has. Good writing, like compelling characters, and it needs to speak to me and my team. Like translated fiction, we do look at the stature of the book in the language in which it is published for translated fiction. The quality of the translation, the stature of the translation. For non-fiction, I have started taking on more non-fiction, which backlists well. I don't want to take on like a non-fiction on the Bihar elections, right after the Bihar elections, like a quickies I'm not interested in doing. So we tend to, I'm very interested in working with people like serious non-fiction writers who've put in a lot of hard work and research. So I represent a lot of NIF fellows, it's a fellowship given to like non-fiction writers, which is as competitive as a major prize. Even like translation fellows, NIF translation fellows. And like if someone has been reporting, on an issue or for a very long time, or following like a political figure, then the credibility for that person to write a book on that subject or figure increases. So we look at that. Sometimes I have to like pander to commercial tastes, and I take on like Instagram influencers, but they have to be like, they have to understand, writing. They have to understand publishing. You know, I mean, we don't, we like sometimes we take on like ghostwriting projects for entrepreneurs, but we need to believe in their story. Yeah, for me, it's important that I have some sort of respect for a writer or a subject who wants his story to be told, you know. I mean, some sort of respect at the intellectual level.
So for me, again, like he said, it's a combination of factors. Like we said, we do certain genres and some genres we will not do. But sometimes I also think through, do I want to work with this person as a human being, you know? I mean, am I going to get along with this person? Or if one of my editors is going to work with this person, is he or she going to get along with that person? You know, because you're going to spend some time. And sometimes people can be talented but very pushy. Then I will look at that ratio. Is the talent so high and the pushiness at medium level? So then maybe yes. Sometimes if the talent is medium and the pushiness is too high, then maybe for me it's a no. So it's a combination of who is writing, what is being written, how it's being written, what is the timing of it, and my general sense of what are they as a person. Sometimes I have a lot of instances where people have over-negotiated themselves out of a deal, you know, and then I kind of sort of forecast down the line that if this person is negotiating so much at this point, then when a publishing contract comes or a film contract comes, then this person is just going to eat my life up. So yeah.
Yeah, so like new writers reaching out to me for a call about a book without even sharing is a strict no-no, you know, and they call me to take my email ID even though the email ID is on the website, so we're not fools. And also like agents cannot, we are not publishers, so we can't change the systems, you know, the structural problems with the systems. We can just, you know, like amplify the concerns and the voices that we are representing.
Yeah, my question is to Pritesh ji and Mr. Gupta. Oh, Jatin. Jatin ji and Mr. Kanish ji. So I was saying, it's not much of a question, but listening to you, it was a rather bleak picture for new writers who have the urge to write and maybe then finally publish. So should they just give it up and, you know, write for themselves?
Before the session started, he and I had a quick chat. Who's going to be bleaker today?
No, but see, I mean, you need to keep writing, practice. When I started out, there were no communities like Bound and Himalayan Writers Retreat. If you just Google literary agents, freelance editors, now you'll have hundreds of options. So I think don't be in a hurry, and at some point you will have to be honest to yourself, you know, on whether or not you know, things are going to work out for your novel or work of fiction, you know, because I don't think fiction, brilliant writing can be taught. You know, you can be taught discipline, you can be taught craft, you know, but it cannot be taught. Just like singing cannot be taught, you know, like so. But there's a huge ecosystem of support for writers. Like you can get access to workshops in India. But when I was starting out, the only access I had was to the literary consultancy in the UK, who were charging like 200 or 300 like pounds for like a 1 hour you know, consultancy over the phone, you know. So I think that's what I feel.
Yeah, I want to add that when the situation is that bleak, right, then there's only one reason to write, and that is because you really want to write.
So why are you writing? Are you writing just for publishing? You can, I mean, there are people who are...
No, eventually it's publishing.
Yeah, but there are people who are damn good writers who choose not to publish, or who choose not to, you know, like publish the very first thing they write. What I'm trying to say is that the market has evolved a lot. You know, when I started out, there were like 2 or 3 publishers, mainstream publishers. Now we have several multinational publishers, some independent publishers. Self-publishing, some decent self-publishing is happening, hybrid self-publishing is happening. But I'm just saying that all this hype is not like creating a new readership. I mean, the print run for, and it's also not dropping. It's not as if like the print run for literary fiction or for poetry has dropped from 2,000 to like 500. It's same, you know, it's the same thing.
So you're saying keep writing and keep getting reviews from all these available
and keep
agencies.
like, yeah, and if you like writing, you just write. I mean, you can keep writing short stories. You can think of developing something into like a long-term project if you see value, or if you have someone encouraging you. Because see, if you are talented and if you've written a very good novel, you will find a publisher. Whether you get a publisher through an agent, or whether you get a publisher through a writer friend who recommends you to an editor, or whether you just run into an editor who invites you to submit, your manuscript. So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think all good things must come to an end. So all I would like to say as the moderator is what Jews, something is said about Jews: see things as they are, but never accept things as they are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. And now I'd like to request Jatin sir to felicitate Durva ma'am.
Thank you for the
Thank you, ma'am. Sir.
This is my debut novel. I have already written one story collection, that is Micha Jharnar Pani, in January 2025, and this is a novel titled Sakhi Mohdadi. This is a historical novel, and I have tried to dig into the history of 4th century AD. This is the story of 4th century AD, when from Kalinga, Buddha's tooth relic was taken by Princess Princess Hemamala and her husband Shudatta. So this story is around that. But this is a historical novel. Not many historical novels are there in Odisha. This is after a long research of 2-3 years. Whatever information I have gathered, I found that most of them are available in Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka otherwise. If you see Buddha's Mahaparinirvana, Dharma Sutta, and Datta Sutta, everything is mentioned about it, that how Buddha's tooth relic, which was collected by Bimbisara's wife Khema, and was handed over to King of Kalinga, who was Brahmadatta, and it was kept at Dantapuri. Where is Dantapuri? Nobody knows. It is controversial, but many people say that Puri is was Dantapuri. So it was kept there. And because Buddhism was spreading and people were worshipping Buddha's relic, this is one of the Buddha Danta or the tooth relic. Another one was transferred to Gandhara, about which there is a mention in all these 3 Buddhist scripts which I mentioned. But not much is known about that Gandhara tooth. But this one was, because it was kept in Kalinga, It was 4th century, it is 1700 years back story. So at that point of time, Kalinga was ruled by Murunda king, Guhashiva. And Kalinga was attacked by Pandya king, Kiradara. So because he was relentlessly attacking Kalinga, it was affecting Kalinga's economy, it was affecting the public life, it was affecting everything. So the king finally requested his friend in Sri Lanka, Meghavanna Mahasena, and he agreed to take it. So it was, at that point of time, it was taken by one of the sailboats, that is Boita. So not much is known about the maritime, courageous maritime mariners of Orissa. Similarly, not much is known presently about the shipbuilding activities and indomitable spirit of our pikers. But still then, I have tried to dig into the unspoken words of history, unwritten history part, and tried to bring out a novel. This is the basic theme, and I have tried to fictionalize around it so that this travelogue, this voyage from Kalinga to Sri Lanka will be interesting. Thank you. I now request.
Ashok Babu, Vartaman Mama Odiat Center Chilikara, founder director, founder director, श्रीयुक्त प्रसन्न कुमार दास को अनुरोध करी से बहिटी को उन्मोचन करेंगे।
गुड इवनिंग नमस्कार समस्त को समस्त टायर्ड होइथिबे एटा ओवर टाइम बोनस ए बहीटा मु जस्ट देखुतली तार राइट ऑफ इट इज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग बुद्ध विषय रे ओडिशा गोटे इंपोर्टेंट क्षेत्र थिला अशोक बाबू से बुद्धिस्ट इंसिडेंट्स बा इवेंट्स को नहीं गोटे बहुत सुंदर नोवेल तैयारी करि परिचंती लेट्स गिव ए बिग हैंड टू हिम because Odisha Buddhist not only a tooth relic विषय रे गोटे कंट्रोवर्सी अच्छी जे इठा जाइची न जाइची बहुत आपर कथा अच्छी but it is certain that the Kandi culture in Kandian in Sri Lanka it is absolutely Oriya, there is no doubt about it. The tooth relic where it is located in that area, it is purely आपण जाइथिबे श्रीलंका से विषय देखिथिबे it is absolutely Orishan culture. In our center in Chilika Varkul, we have 2-3 Buddhist paintings from Kandian paintings, where it is similar to our Patachitra. I mean the color treatment, the application, the composition, everything is similar to our Patachitra. It is not only that, even we had a Sri Lankan troupe this year which performed, they are all Buddhists, they performed during this Chilika Seldak festival. You will find lot of similarities in their dance form and our Odissi dance form. Only thing is our Abhinaya is there, they don't have Abhinaya. Otherwise most of the things are common. So what prompts me to say that there is some linkage, and if his book can establish that linkage through the tooth relic with Sri Lanka and Odisha, that will be great. And number 2, I have some expectation and homework I expect from you, Ashokji. Can you write another book on Buddhist? I can give a little, now you have written about Sri Lanka and Odisha. There is also a strong Buddhist connection of South Korea with Odisha. There is a monastery there in South Korea which is set up by, we don't know, all of us we don't know. It was set up by an Oriya fellow, Oriya Buddhist monk, who traveled all the way from Odisha to Sri Lanka in 8th century. His name in Korean language is Sang, but in Odisha nobody knows what was his name. If you can do little more research, we have a MOU with that Shanmudo monastery there. They want to do research that who was that monk who came from Odisha and set up this monastery. So that can be another novel. So this is a homework for you with the expectation that you should come up with the second novel. Thank you.
धन्यवाद जानी बंद कर दो समस्त को धन्यवाद हमें ना आया कौन कहार किसी कहिवार अच्छी यदि कहिबे आ गोटे नुआ अछि हैं बर्तन हबो तेणु ठीक है समस्त को धन्यवाद
एबे मो ओडिशा लेखिका संसदर सदस्य मानकु
प्रेसिडेंट डॉक्टर शकुंतला बलियार सिंह जी की तांकर अनुवाद पुस्तक पई राज्य साहित्य एकाडेमी और केंद्र साहित्य एकाडेमी पुरस्कार प्राप्त करचंती तापरे आमर अछंती एठी आमर सेक्रेटरी कमल कुमारी दास से मध्य अनुवाद रे काम से मध्य तांकर बहुत गुड़े पुस्तक रचना करचंती एवं तांकर काव्य एवं तांकर बही बहुत प्रकाशित होईची मु रेबा पटनायक मु मध्य अनुवाद रे काम करिची मोर 6टी बही अनुवाद पुस्तक प्रकाशित होईची एवं आउ आम संगरे अछंती कानन बाला पटनायक तांकर 5टी अनुवाद पुस्तक प्रकाशित होईची आउ आम संगरे अछंती शरद कुमारी मिश्र जे कि अनुवाद साहित्य उपरे बहुत काम करिसंती वर्तमान आमे अनुवाद साहित्य उपरे आजिरो ई सेशनटा अनुवाद साहित्य उपरे किछि आलोचना रहिबो
धन्यवाद रेबा पटनायक मु एठी शकुंतला बलियार सिंह को टिके प्रश्न करिया को चाहूची जे हठात आपण अनुवाद को काहे की बाछिले निजर कृति हिसाब रे मौलिक लेखा एवं अनुवाद भितर कौन तफात आपण अनुभव करिसेंती एवं केउन लेखा आपण को आकृष्ट करिछि
धन्यवाद कमल कुमारी प्रकृत रे अनुवाद करवा कथा मन को विशेष आसी नथिला पिला दिनु बहुत गप बही मु पढुथिली और बहुत छोट दिन कटक रे पढुथवा तो लाइब्रेरी थिला एवं अजब देशर एलिस टम कका कुटीर ए सब बही पढ़ी 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 परवर्ती काल रे कॉलेज को आसला परे आमर गोटे नन डिटेल पढ़ाउतला मेयर ऑफ कास्टर ब्रिज रे जो थॉमस हार्डिंगर नोवेल रे माइकल हेंचार्ड रो जो कैरेक्टर अत्यधिक मद्यपान करी गोटे विलेज फेयर रे गाँ मेला रे निज स्त्री की से 3 टंका रे बिकी देइची एवं तार जीवन केमती नष्ट हो जाइची केमिति मनीष गोटे मैन इज ए पपेट इन द हैंड्स ऑफ फॉर्च्यून भाग्य हाथ गोटे क्रीडनक से कथा होता एवं मु बहुत कांदी से बही पढ़ी सेतेबेले बयस कम 16-17 वर्ष +2 फर्स्ट ईयर प्री यूनिवर्सिटी पढ़ुता है मु मन मन भावी से बहीटा को अनुवाद करी रेभेन्सा कॉलेज रे पढ़ला पर आहुरी बेसी पढ़ी बीजेपी कॉलेज रे जॉइन कला पर आहुरी बेसी इंग्रेजी गप पढ़ी किंतु मन भीतर सब थाए मेयर ऑफ कास्टर ब्रिज को केमती अनुवाद करी एवं चाकरी कला परे 80 परे मु मेयर ऑफ कास्टर ब्रिज को आग अनुवाद कली मोर इच्छा जे विश्व साहित्यर जेते जेते सब क्लासिक चिरंतनी ग्रंथ रही ताकू आम भाषा को केमती आनिबा मु तो ओडिया पढ़ौथिली ओडिया अध्यापक भाव में काम करछि किंतु इंग्राजी पढ़िबा हेतु इंग्राजी रो बहुत क्लासिक बही सब मु अनुवाद कली आउ जो गोटे प्रश्न पचारे द्वितीय ये अनुवाद और ओरिजिनल लेखा भितर कौन तफात भल गुड क्वेश्चन आमे बहुत ट्रोल्ड होइछु अनुवाद करी अनेक कहिसेंती जे निज लेखा न लिखिके कहीं अन्य जनक लेखा को एते इम्पोर्टेंस दौच कहीं करुच किंतु आज आम देखुचु व्हेन वर्ल्ड हैज बिकम ए ग्लोबल विलेज सेठी आमर अनुवाद साहित्यर इम्पोर्टेंस केते बढ़ी एवं आम भाषार साहित्य को आमे बाहर को भी देई पारिबा जहाँ रेबा जी करुचंती से ओडिया रु इंग्लिश करंती इंग्लिश रु ओडिया मध्यम करंती थैंक यू
मैडम 1997 रु निरोला अनुवाद पत्रिका शतभिषा प्रकाश करिया पई आपनकर ई कथा मन को केमती आसला ई चिंता
सेतेबेले 1980 मसीहा पर्यंत मु लक्ष्य कली जे आमर अनुवादक माने गोटे गोटे गप बा लेखा बंगला रू अनुवाद करी गोटे मैगजीन पछरे दौथिले अनुवाद लेखा विशेष आसुनता से अनुवादर स्टैंडर्ड मध्य ठीक नथिला मु टिके देशप्रेमी तेणु मु भाबिली जे आमर कहीं अनुवाद पत्रिका गोटे कहीं बाहरबनी सेतेबेले निरोला अनुवाद पत्रिका नथिला तेणु आमे अनुवाद पत्रिका शतभिषा गोटे 97 पूजा बेले आमे डिसाइड कलु स्थिर कलु एवं ताको हठात कि ताको कौन तार भविष्य हम कौन हम आमे भाविलुनि से आज पर्यंत कंटिन्यू करुच्ची 25 वर्ष जेतेबेले हैला 2022 रे आमे मध्य तार सिल्वर जुबली करिचु काननबाला से सम्मानित होइचंती शरद कुमार मिश्र सम्मानित होइचंती आमे 25 जन को से सम्मानित करिथिलु एवं शतभिषा पत्रिका हंड्रेड्स ऑफ ट्रांसलेटर्स क्रिएटेड शतभिषा जोगु बहुत क्रिएटेड होइचंती एवं विशेष भाव में ओडिशा लेखिका संसदर लेखिका माने अनुवाद आड़िके मन देइचंती एवं कौन जड़े स्त्री लोक जितेबाला अनुवाद कर तार अनुभूति एते शाणित एते से मग्न माटी सहित से जड़ित तेणु अनुवाद आमर दिन को दिन इम्प्रूव करिछि सत्य भाषा तार कंट्रीब्यूशन
राज्य रे आउ एभली केवल अनुवाद पत्रिका नाही
ना निरोला पत्रिका निरोला एपरिक सेतेबेले नथिला 97 रे जेतेबेले हैला सेतेबेले नथिला ठीक कहिछ एवं से ता परे परे महाराष्ट्र रे गोटे बाहरला एवं वेस्ट बेंगल रे गोटे अनुवाद बोली नवनीता देवसेन आसथिले से कहले तमर एठी बाहरुची आ ताले आमे भी गोटाए करिवु नवनीता देवसेन सेतेबेले बाहर कले अनुवाद पत्रिका
धन्यवाद धन्यवाद मैडम तबे आपन को हिसाब रे अनुवादक को स्थिति 2000 पूर्व किपरि थिला आउ एबे किपरि अछि किंतु एक कथा आपण किछि कहि सारिचंती आउ टिके आलोकपात करिवे
2000 पूर्व अनुवादक मान को सेकेंड क्लास राइटर भाव में देखुले सेकेंड क्लास राइटर ଯେମିତି ସେକେଣ୍ଡ କ୍ଲାସ୍ ସିଟିଜେନ୍ ସେମିତିକା ସେକେଣ୍ଡ କ୍ଲାସ୍ ରାଇଟର୍ ଭାବରେ ଦେଖୁଥିଲେ ଏବଂ ଅନେକ ଲୋକ ଯାହା ସବୁ କହିଛନ୍ତି ଯେ କାହିଁକି ଅନୁବାଦ କରୁଛ, ଅନୁବାଦ କରିବାରେ କ'ଣ ଆନନ୍ଦ, ଗୋଟେ ଭାଷାକୁ ତ ଭାଷାକୁ ବଦଳେଇ ଦେବ ଆଉ नो भाषार भाषा को बदलैबा अनुवाद नुहे एवं आज प्रमाणित होईची जहाँ आमे 30 वर्ष तले चिंता करितलु ताही राइट थिंकिंग थिला। पृथ्वी जतबेले आगौची साइंस आगौची बहुत प्रकार आमर सब चेंज होची कौन डायनामिक्स चेंज होची सेथिरे यदि ट्रांसलेशन को आम गुरुत्व न दबा एडे बड़ पृथ्वी रे भाषार जो समस्या पुणी पृथ्वी भारत वर्ष भली गोटे बहुभाषी देश आमे निज भाषा को चिन्हिबा भारतर अन्यान्य भाषा मान को चिन्हिबा एवं विदेशर भाषा मान को चिन्हिबा एवं आमे आमर सांस्कृतिक जीवन को अधिक रुद्धिमंत करि परिबा से मानकर भाषा को टमकका कुटीर गोटाए बही अमेरिकार ललाटरू दासत्व प्रथार कलंक को पोछीदेला। मैक्सिम गर्कींकर मदर गोटे बही माँ जहाँकि ओडिया रे ट्रांसलेटेड होईची से बही रूसियन रिवोल्यूशन आनीदेला। कैंडिड वोल्टेयर गोटे बही जहाँकि फ्रेंच रिवोल्यूशन करिथिला। तेणु मसी सबु बेले 80 ठारू अधिक शक्तिशाली तलवार शक्तिशाली नुहे कलम ही शक्तिशाली। तेणु कलम को धरी आमे बहुत किछि करि परिबा। वर्तमान रो समय रे अनुवादर बहुत गुरुत्व अच्छी सेटा को अनुभव करूछु बोली ओडिशा लेखिका संसद आज एई भली गोटाए सेमिनार आयोजन करिसेंती कलिंग लिटरेरी फेस्टिवल सहायता रे।
मैडम मोर गोटे प्रश्न रहिबा आपनको प्रश्न पचारिया पूर्वरु मु खाली एति कहबी आमर अछंती पुराना लेखक माने एठी निश्चिंत भाव से माने पढ़ी थिबे लॉर्ड उलिन्स डॉटर बिले आमर गोटे नॉन डिटेल बही रे चली विषयटे थिला इंग्लिश रे ताको सेतबेले भाबी पार नथिलु किंतु ओडिया रे ताको अनुवाद करी आमे गोटे नाटकटे करिथिलु स्कूल कार्य रे 9th क्लास रे सेटा पढ़ा होतला तारी ऊपर कला परे मु जतला आसे एठी देखिली जे शकुंतला बलियार सिंह आमर अनुवादर मदर बिले हम तांको कहू सतविसार मदर अनुवादर मदर तांको जतबेले मु देखिली ओडिशा लेखिका संसद रे प्रथम रु आमे 2 जन जाक अछु सेतबेले भाबिली मु टिके अनुवाद करंती कि मु खाली 2 पद कहि के प्रश्न पचारिबी। मु सेतबेले जाइथिली नेपाल नेपाल लेखिकांको निर्वाचित गल्प बिली गोटे पुस्तक मत मिला। मु अपांकर ए विषय एइथिपई काहे कहूची मु अपांको आसी पचारली अपा मु ए बहिटी अनुवाद करिबी। प्रथम अनुवाद बही मोर थिला। मु अपांको प्रश्न एई पचारुची जे से तो 37-38 खंड बही अनुवाद करचंती एवं 27 देखुचंती सारा ओडिसार अनुवाद करिथिबा अनुवादिका अनुवादक सहित से मिसुचंती किंतु तांको खाली एतिकी मु प्रश्न पचारबी जो एडे मोटा बही पाखे धरिचंती पहली गिरिमिटिया ताकू गिरिराज किशोर बोधे लिखिथिले हिंदी रे लिखिथिले से ताकू अनुवाद करचंती केमिति एते मोटा मोटा बही अनुवाद कर पारचंती। मु केवल काहेकि कहबी मु सरू सरू बही अनुवाद करची तेणु मु मैडम को प्रश्न पचारुचे से केमिति आको करि पारुचंती केते धैर्य तांग पाखरे अछि।
धन्यवाद कानन बाला। धैर्य नथिले जीवनर अन्य नाम होची धैर्य। साधना कले साधना जे करिवो साधक जे हबो से खाली तो चारि कांथ भितर आमे कथाटा सुनी देई कि करदेले हे जीवनी काम देखेबा को पड़िबो। गिरिराज किशोर जो बहीटी 1200 पृष्ठार बही से बही के अनुवाद करिबारे प्रकृत रे समस्त क्रेडिट जीव प्रतिभा राय को ज्ञानपीठ विजयिनी प्रतिभा राय गोटाए केंद्र एकाडेमी गोटाए हेइथिला सेमिनार होटेल स्वस्ति प्रीमियम रे सेठी गिरिराज किशोर आसते अतिथि होगी से प्रतिभा जी को कहले मोर पहली गिरमिटिया महात्मा गांधी दक्षिण आफ्रिका जीवन उपर बही या किए ट्रांसलेशन करिवो। आमर बहुत ट्रांसलेटर जाई तांका पाखे जुटिले प्रतिभा समस्त को मना करदेले कहले ना तांकु दियनी से माने बही नेबे पकेइकी रखिबे के करिवेनी गोटे पागल ट्रांसलेटर अछि गोटे पागल अनुवादक आम भितर अछि से होची शकुंतला बलियार सिंह ताकु दियो सी करिवो मते डाकिले से होटेल भितर कहले आपण ए बहीटा करिवे गांधीजी उपरे आमे पिलादिनु गांधीजी जीवनी को लेकर बहुत उत्साहित तेणु पहिलगिरी मीडिया को मुझे देखिली किंतु 1200 पृष्ठार बही 8 थर आज्ञा संशोधन 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 तांकर आफ्रिकान जीवन देखापी मु गली दक्षिण आफ्रिका टूर रे जोन्सबर्ग रे एवं तांकर विभिन्न स्थान रे जोठी तांको ठेलिकी पकई देथिले ट्रेन फर्स्ट क्लास कंपार्टमेंट रु सेठी तांकर गोटे विराट मूर्ति होईची गोटे स्कूल को गलु शुक्रवार होता है पिला माने गांधी बेसरे सब आसुचंती कि सम्मान गांधी प्रति से माने गांधी को एपर्यंत भूली नांती गांधी को आमे भूलीचु किंतु से माने भूली नांती आउ एटा गोटे रिसर्च बही ताको मु ट्रांसलेशन करके बहुत आनंद पाइछे याको समाज छापीची एवं आउ मध्य मु गोटे आउ गोटे प्रश्न तापर अछि कोन देखिलो
अच्छा से जो आपण पाइछंती रॉयल्टी ताकू केउ बाटर आपण खर्च करछन ताकू तो ओडिसा रो छापिछंती हमर समाज प्रकाशक छापिछंती तण आपण को जो रॉयल्टी मिलछि सेटा को आपण को बाटर खर्च करछ
भल कथा पचारचंती चैलेंजिंग क्वेश्चन समाज एटा को छापिछि 1200 पृष्ठार बही के छापिबो किंतु समाज छापिछि कारण कोन एटा गोटे महात्मा गांधी को जीवनी उपरे प्रकृत में से मते बही छापिला बेले कहते आप वन टाइम रॉयल्टी नेबे ना वर्ष को वर्ष नेबे मु कहली ना देबे वर्ष को वर्ष बही बिकंतु मु किछि कहि नथिली एबे मु सुनिली एई मंच पाइछि बोली मु कहूछि एबे मु सुनिली ओसेपा ए बही रु 1000 बही नेछि मु जानिनी मते कहि नांती मु तापर गोटे चिट्ठी तांको लिखिली प्रभास आचार्य को एई मंच पाइछि बोली कहूछि अनुवादकर अवस्था से मते किछि उत्तर देलेनी प्रकृत में ओसेपा नेछि ना ओसेपा नेइनी किछि उत्तर देलेनी केवल जनक जरिया जड़े कहले कहले समाज पाखे कौन पैसा बुड़ी जीवो एंड से मत एपर्यंत जन ना दे हैव नॉट पेड ए सिंगल पाए टू मी किंबा जन भी ना जदि प्रकृत में कथाटा सत्य होता है विल टेक दिस थ्रू ओडिशा लेखिका संसद टू द मिनिस्टर कल्चर मिनिस्टर एवं तांको चैलेंज करिवो किंतु बही एठी छापिले पब्लिशर माने कौन केते काहाकू दउथिबे आमे तो पाई परनु किछि आ
बर्तमान मोर प्रश्न रहिबो रेबा पटनायक को आपण कौन कौन अनुवाद करिसेंते एवं केउ अनुवाद आपण को खूब उत्साहित करिछि
मोर मोर दुईटी गल्प संकलन प्रथम बहीटी शेष पत्र सेटा ओ हेनरींकर द लास्ट लीफ उपर आधारित एवं आउ गोटे गल्प संकलन गोटे लाल पक्षीर कहानी सेटा जड़े अमेरिकन राइटर ओस्कार वाइल्डकर माने तांकर से गल्प उपरे गोटे मोर प्रथम गल्प तांकर से गल्पटी तेणु बहिर ना से अनुसार गोटे लाल पक्षीर कहानी एक्चुअली तार ओरिजिनल इंग्लिश नेम है द स्कारलेट आइबिस किंतु सेटा न दे मो ओडिया रे गोटे लाल पक्षीर कहानी देइथिली सेटा बहुत सुंदर अनुवाद माने मु मते कौन लगिला मु कहि परिबिनी मु कहि परिबी किंतु बहुत जन ताको भल पाइले से बहीटी को आमर लेखिका संसद रे समस्ते बहुत प्रशंसा कले से बहीटी बहुत मते भल लगिथिला तापरे मु डॉक्टर शकुंतला बलियार सिंह मैडम कर गोटे ओडिया बही षोडशी ताको मु इंग्लिश रे अनुवाद करची देवी सेटा मध्य समस्ते बहुत एप्रिशिएट करचंती भल पाइचंती आउ से आउ तेणु मोर मोर जी बही मु तो निश्चय भल पाइबी सेटा अन्य माने कहिबे मो बही केमती हेची
रेबा पटनायक गोटे विशेषत्व होची से इंग्रजी रो ओडिया को अनुवाद करती ओडिया को इंग्रजी रे अनुवाद करती हिंदी रो ओडिया अनुवाद करती ओडिया रो हिंदी रे अनुवाद करती एटा तांकर गोटे विशेषत्व ओडिया ओडिशा रे इंग्लिश डिपार्टमेंट रो होंतु ओडिया डिपार्टमेंट रो होंतु बा हिंदी डिपार्टमेंट रो होंतु बेसी लोक एमती बाइलिंगुअल ट्रांसलेटर्स नाहंती
धन्यवाद मैडम
हाँ मोर गोटे प्रश्न होची जे मु तो शकुन्तला बलियारसिंह अपांगर बहुत गुड़े बही पढ़ी एमतीक तांकर रत्नावली जोटा कि अनुवाद रत्नावली कावेरी परी झीटे आहरी बहुत गुड़े पढ़ी एवं प्रति संख्या गुड़िक शत विषय पढ़ुची मु भी लिखी केते गुड़े किंतु तांकर जो अनुवाद कला जो कौशल मु कावेरी परी झीटे जोटा कि पुरस्कृत होती केन्द्र साहित्य एकाडेमी से पढ़ी विभोर हो गली विमुग्ध हो गली मुझे आंकर कलम ये सरस्वती केमती विजय कले एत सुंदर से अनुवाद कर तमिल भाषा बोधे यहाँ अनुवाद कर निज माने आम भाषार लेखाठू भी आहरी उन्नत धरण रही कहीं मु विभूति पट्टनायक एमानकर पढ़े ताले ये मु पचारुची जे महोदय कहे अनुवाद कला कौशलटार आ कौन कौन अच्छी अनुवाद कला कौशल केते विषय हम दृष्टिपात करेंगे मुझे अनुरोध कर
धन्यवाद शरत कुमारी आमर अनुवाद कला विषय यहाँ कावेरी भली झीटे गोटे तमिल ग्रंथ ताकू लिखिंट त्रिपुरा सुंदरी लक्ष्मी एक कावेराई पोलू आमे ताको ओडिया अनुवाद कलु एक कावेरी भली झीटे तीनोटी नारी एथे रहिले त्रिपुरा सुंदरी लक्ष्मी रहिले कावेरी नदी रहिला एवं अनुवादिका मध्य रहिले एटा होची दक्षिण आफ्रिका रे तमिल रो बहुत लोक चली जाउथिले विशेषकर नर्स माने अमेरिका पळौथिले ऑस्ट्रेलिया पळौथिले यूरोप कंट्रीज को पळै जाउथिले सेमती गोटे तमिल राज्यर गोटे गाँ ग्रामांचलर गोटे परिवारर कथा सेठी कावेरी बोली झीटी अच्छी से नर्स एवं सी तार आम भारतीय माने जोठी गले भी परिवार भितर तार बापा मरी जाइछन्ती से किमती हताश होइछि एवं शेष में दामोदरन बोली आ गोटे तमिल युवक ताकू रक्षा करछि हुई जे एडवोकेट एन एडवोकेट आओ से जो कहले तमिल ग्रंथ प्रकृत में तमिलटा नियर टू संस्कृत अनेक शब्द ओडिया रे जहा तमिल रे मध्य सेया पद्मालया पद्मलोचन पद्मपाद ये सब शब्द आम घर पाखे जड़े तमिल एजी ऑफिस रे काम करुले जड़े थिले वयस्क लोक तांको झील मोर सांग थिला सी मते टिके टिके तमिल पढ़िबार साहाय्य कला एवं तार गोटे इंग्लिश ट्रांसलेशन मध्य मो पाखे थिला सेटा केंद्र एकाडेमी छापी थिला से बहीटी को तेणु सेटा हेची आ धन्यवाद
बर्तमान मु प्रश्न करी शरत कुमारी मिश्र को आपण कौन अनुवाद कर आपणकर अनुभूति कौन अनुवाद उपरे
हाँ मु केते गुड़े कविता आ बही बंद करिछि हाँ कुंतल कुमारी सावंतर जो बहीर 40 टी अच्छी हिंदी लेखा गुड़िक से गुड़िक मुझे अति सरल भाषा अनुवाद करिछि बरमाला जोटा हूँ बरमाला 40 टी हाँ बरणमाला से 40 टी हूँ कविता से गुड़िक मुझे अनुवाद करछि छोट छोट कविता हेले भी छोट छोट कविता हेले भी भारी भल लगे मत मुझे कविता करछि इंग्लिश रो केते गुड़े वर्ड्सवर्थ शेली ये कविंकर लेखा गुड़ाक आमती सॉलिटरी रिपर है छोट छोट कविता बहुत गुड़े करिछि बही भितर तो हिंदी करिछि बहुत 2-3टा बही करिछि जेहेतु से गुड़िक बर्तमान मोर आसीनी किंतु आहुरी गुड़े करिछि करियार मोर आग्रह लगे जे अन्य भाषा को मुझे निजर मातृभाषा परिप्रकाश कले अन्य भाषाटा को मो भाषा भितर लोक बुझीपारे जानीपारे हृदयंगम करें आमे जमी गबन गोदान प्रेमचंद गबन गोदान गुड़ा मोर प्रिय मु बहुत मैट्रिक पास कला बेले बही गुड़ा बहुत पढ़ी तापर शरत चंद्र होचंदी बेंगली लेखक तांकर अनुवाद गुड़ा पढ़ी तापर हिंदी एमानकर पढ़ी तेणु से गुड़िक आमको जमी भल लगे आम सेमती अन्य भाषार बही गुड़िक अनुवाद कले आम उत्कल भाषा ओडिया भाषा आमको बहुत भल लगे आम तो भाषा आगुरी अच्छी भागवत है सारला महाभारत गुड़ संस्कृत भाषा अनुवाद होती तेणु से गुड़िक हृदय स्पर्शी आमर समस्ते अनुभव करछन्ति तेणु से गुड़िक मत बहुत भल लगे
धन्यवाद शरत कुमारी मैडम आपण पई आ गोटे प्रश्न रही ओडिया मानक जीवन वेद भागवत एवं आदिकवि शारदा दासकर महाभारत को आपण अनुवाद बोली कहि परिबे कि
जमा नुहे से अवश्य बंधु शरत कुमारी कहले अनुवाद बोली, यह अनुवाद नुहे। जदि अनुवाद होता ताहले ताहले सारला महाभारत रे जो नवगुंजर रहिला, नवगुंजर वेश किए क्या देखई कृष्ण अर्जुन को देखई एवं नवगुंजर रे 9टा प्रकार रही जंतुर यथा तार बेक रही कंठ रही मयूर भली, तार पाद 4टी, गोटे मनुष्यर, गोटे व्याघ्रर, गोटे हस्तीर एवं आ गोटे व्याघ्रर, आउ लांज होची सर्प परी, कटी होची सिंह परी, चूल होची ना कुकुट कुकुड़ा आउ तेणु ये जो नवगुंजर नवगुंजर किए देखई अर्जुन श्रीकृष्ण को जिते श्रीकृष्ण वर्षक जाइए अरण्यवास करुले। एटा संस्कृत रे नहीं। आमर जो भागवत को जीवन वेद कहगला, गोपलीला जो आमर कृष्णकर वृंदावन रे जहाँ सब करिसेंती कार्यकलाप तांकर एगुड़ाक सब ओडिया जनजीवन कथा। गोपांगना माने सकरुणा करुणार सहित दधि मुंडेक जाऊँच से माने कौन कृष्ण को धरिक उद्धव कौन कहले कहले कौ जन्म कौन पुण्य कर जे कृष्ण को धरिकी तुम एत वर्ष लीला कल कौच कौन ना कृष्ण तुमको ठकीदेले। तेणु आमर जीवन बोध एथर ओडियामी रही संपूर्ण भाव में ओडियामी रही। अनुवाद से जाना कथा। अनुवाद केवल लैंग्वेज ट्रांसलेशन नुहे, कल्चर ट्रांसलेशन, सांस्कृतिक ट्रांसलेशन एवं निज मातृभाषा रे ताको केमती प्रकाश। ओडिया गोटे एते साइंटिफिक लैंग्वेज, एते विज्ञान सम्मत लैंग्वेज। दुख लगुच बर्तमान समय ओडिया भाषा को अनेक पसंद करूना, किंतु एते वैज्ञानिक। इंग्रेजी रे देखो 26टी मात्र लैंग्वेज लेटर अच्छी, आमर 52टा लेटर। गोटे कथा देखो, खसी पड़ुछि कि आकाशु सत्य गंगा जमुना, वर्षार वर्णना करुछंती। खसी पड़ुछि कि आकाशु सत्य गंगा जमुना, तांकर इंग्रेजी रे कौन कहते? इट इज रेनिंग लाइक कैट्स एंड डॉग्स। कैन यू इमेजिन रियली? इट इज रेनिंग लाइक कैट्स एंड डॉग्स। कुकुर बिलाई जमी कली करती सेमती वर्षा होची गर्जन करके। आमर कहले खसी पड़ुछि कि आकाशु सते गंगा जमुना, गायक अच्छी बुझे तार मर्म। तेणु यही जो जिनिस ये जिनिस कम कथा नुहे। ओडिया भाषा आमर एते सुंदर भाषा, एथिरे आमे जेते जेते विश्व साहित्य को आनी परिबा आमर भल हबो। एवं आमर उपेन्द्र भंज, दीनकृष्ण, रीतिजुग कवि मान को आमे जेते देखई परिबा सारला महाभारत को करबा तो कष्टकर, किंतु ताकू जेते विदेशी साहित्य रे देई परिबा, इंग्रेजी रे अनुवाद करि परिबा, अन्य भाषा रे अनुवाद करि परिबा, सेते आमर भी साहित्य समृद्ध हबो। धन्यवाद।
मैडम को मोर आ गोटे प्रश्न जे आपण केउ पुस्तक अनुवाद करी सर्वाधिक खुशी पाइछंती, विह्वल होइछंती, एवं अनुवाद रु कोन आपण एते दीर्घ दिन अनुवाद रु आपण कोन शिखिछंती?
धन्यवाद कमल कुमारी। मोर सबुठु प्रिय जो बही टिके मो अनुवाद करिके आनंद पाइछि ताहा होछि दांतेंक डिवाइन कॉमेडी। दांतेंक डिवाइन कॉमेडी होछि 13th सेंचुरी लैटिन भाषा थिला सारा पृथ्वी रे डोमिनेट करुला। इंग्रेजी भाषा नथिला। इंग्रेज माने रोम रो लैटिन भाषा सब आगे अनुवाद कर पकेले। डिवाइन कॉमेडी 13th सेंचुरी थिले दांते आलिघेरी दांते जज साहेब थिले, तांको नारे करप्शन चार्जेस है जहाँ कि से करी नथिले एवं निर्वासन दंड हो गला। सेतिकी बेले से लिखिले डिवाइन कॉमेडी। नरक यात्रा, नरक रे लोक माने केमती सड़िबे, नरक रे सड़िबे माने केवल चोर डकायत नुहंती आज्ञा, लेखक माने मध्य सबुठ बेसी निआरे जलुचंती। काहेकि ना लेखक माने जदि बाजे लेखा लेखंती ताहले जेनेरेशन पर जेनेरेशन कुशिक्षित हो जिवे। मास्टर तमें कह मास्टर गुड़ाक बड़ निरीह, जमा निरीह नुहंती, साढ़े शैतान। काहेकि ना से माने जदि कुशिक्षा देवे छात्र छात्री को ताहले गोटाए जेनेरेशन तापर जेनेरेशन 30 वर्ष भीतर से केते पिला को खराब कला। तेणु एटा गोटे नरक यात्रा सामाजिक जीवन चित्र एथिरे रही। तेणु मु डिवाइन कॉमेडी कला बेले ताकू मते 20 वर्ष लगिला। आ गोटे इंटरेस्टिंग डिवाइन कॉमेडी अच्छी मत कहीं भल लगे। केंद्र एकाडेमी सुनील गंगोपाध्याय जी आसती यही मेफेयर होटेल था। मु गौरहरि दास को कहीकि आसिली तांको देखा कली मुझे सार मु डिवाइन कमेडी क्षेत्र 20 वर्ष हो गलानी मते समस्त कहते चंचल छाप मु कहली आज्ञा मु डिवाइन कमेडी करछि ओडिया रे आपण केंद्र एकेडमी द्वारा छापिबे ना हाँ हाँ तमे लेखिकी दियो 15 दिन पर बंगला रे बाहरला तांकर अछंती ट्रांसलेटर्स गोटे जाति ट्रांसलेटर रखी 15 जन 20 जन 30 जन लेखा गोटे गोटे ग्रुप करी 15 दिन भितर डिवाइन कमेडी बाहर कले मते 20 वर्ष लागिला एवं एठी मध्य मते लोक कहते आपण कौन डिवाइन कमेडी करुँच अन्य मान तो डिवाइन कमेडी इंग्लिश वाला करदेवे कहीं करना एपर्यंत ताकू ओडिशा साहित्य एकेडमी छापी 2 थर छपी सारे एवं भी तार को अच्छी कि नहीं पाखे मुझे कहीपरि गोटे रेयर बुक मु गर्वित जे मो जाति केतबेले किए पढ़ो डिवाइन कमेडी ओरिजिनल पढ़ले कहीं बुझीपारे 13th सेंचुरी लैटिन त्रयोदश शताब्दी लैटिन से 4टा अनुवाद इंग्राजी अनुवाद मु तार आनी एवं बसी 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 कली काव्य महाकाव्य काव्य आकार में कली हो जाइटा तेणु याटा गोटे आम गर्वित आम देश में दे पारुचु आउ अनुवाद करिबार जो आनंद अनुवाद करी 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 मो हाथ सबल होइछि शक्तिशाली होइछि एवं तापरे मु लेखि पारिछि वसुधा नंदिनी भली गोटाए नोवेल 700 पृष्ठार 650 पृष्ठार नोवेल 20टा रामायण पढ़िकी मु धैर्य शिखिछि ट्रांसलेशन मु धैर्य शिखिछि मु साधना करने को शिखिछि एटा मो पे मु निजे ही बलिष्ठ होइछि तेणु मु अंतत एतिकी कहबी जे साधना करने को पड़िबो।
हौ मैडम आमर समय सरी आसुची तेबे शेष प्रश्न मु आपन को पचारिबी अनुवाद कर्म रे युवपीढ़ी को आपण किपरि अधिक आग्रही करि परिबे।
युवपीढ़ी को मु एतिकी कहबी जे यही तो केएलएफ गोटे लिली हाउस कोठरी भितरे आमको एतिकी सुजोग देले किंतु आमर जो माने अछंती आमर युवपीढ़ी से माने जीवन गोटे खेल घर नुह निजको हसई पारिले अन्य को हसैब एते तरतर युवपीढ़ी दौड़ुचंती साधना करने को पड़ो एटी शुणी देकी चलीगले हो पारिबो नाही कलम धरिकी बसिया पड़ो कंप्यूटर करंतु जो थे करंतु आउ बड़ गोटे हूँ एआई ट्रांसलेशन विपद आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस कौन कर कही हेनी कमल कुमारी दास को से कले कमल माने लोटस कुमारी माने डॉटर दास माने सर्वेंट लोटस डॉटर सर्वेंट तेणु सेमती घंट घोड़ाई रख हे महाबाहु घंट को करदेला घंटी टिन टिन घोड़ाई को करदेला घोड़ा हॉर्स महाबाहु लार्ज हैंड्स किछि अर्थ नहीं तेणु आमर लेखिका संसद रे बहुत अनुवादक अच्छा एम सब जाइए इग्निर बही को ट्रांसलेशन करुँच स्टडी मटेरियल को स्त्री लोक मैंने बहुत करुँच किंतु एआई ट्रांसलेशन रो गोटे विपद रही धैर्यर सहित करने को पड़ो बहुत आगे पढ़ा पड़ो युवपीढ़ी की कहबी से माने कंप्यूटर रे पढ़ंतु मोबाइल रे पढ़ंतु बा कौन सी जंत्रपाति लगेगी जहाँ पढ़ंतु किंतु पढ़ंतु न पढ़िले अनलेस यू रीड यू कैन नॉट राइट राइटिंग मेक्स ए मैन परफेक्ट आउ रीडिंग तमर नॉलेज को बढ़िबो एंड मोस्ट पावरफुल इज ही हु नोज थिंग्स बर्तमान साइंस कौटी पहुँचला क्वांटम फिजिक्स रे पहुँचला तुम्हें न पढ़िले आइनस्टाइन केमती जान तुम्हें न पढ़िले भारत जे सब ज्ञानर आधार केमती जान तुम्हें केमिति जान जे केमितिका भागवत अनुवाद प्रबंध बोली कहते भागवत न पढ़िले केमती जान भागवत पढ़बनी तुम कहीदेव भागवत पर जीवन वेद बोली आम कहीदेलु शुणीदेल केमती जीवन वेद भागवत पढ़ भगवत गीता पढ़ महाभारत पढ़ प्रतिदिन गोटे गोटे अध्याय पढ़ गोटे गोटे पढ़ किंतु धैर्य ना तेणु निश्चय पढ़ा पड़ो आउ केएलएफ आम धन्यवाद माने कि
केएलएफ आपण को मन कथा कहबाकू सुजोग देइथिबारु आपण तांको कोन कहिबे।
केएलएफ प्रति आम कृतज्ञ 12 वर्ष है ये अनुष्ठान है ओडिशा लेखिका संसद को से माने एबे स्मरण करिसेंती आमको ये सुजोग देइसेंती आमे आमर मन कथा कहि पारिलु एटा कम कथा नुह आसिलु आमर संसद तो अच्छी 1500 मेंबर आमर अछंती एवं से माने समस्ते सुलेखिका ट्रांसलेटर्स एवं बहुत बहुत पुरस्कार रे पुरस्कृता आज तो तांकर 15 तारिख ना केते तारिख रे बामा बही तमिल रो गोटे बामा बही अनुवाद करचंती चेन्नई रे उन्मोचित हबो बाय द गवर्नर एंड द मिनिस्टर किंतु से जाई पारुनांती तांकर असुविधा अछि तांकर समुदी मरि जाइछन्ती तेणु केते केते नेशनल अवार्ड पाउछन्ती हमर ये माने ये तो कानन बाला तो पाइछन्ती नेशनल अवार्ड शरद कुमारी पाइछन्ती कमल कुमारी पाइछन्ती तेणु बहुत जिनस पाइछन्ती केएलएफ किंतु जो सुजोग दैछन्ती आमे तांका प्रति कृतज्ञता प्रकाश करिवो एवं कहिबो केएलएफ कलिंग लिटरेरी फेस्टिवल गोटे बुद्धिमान एवं गुणी संस्था गुण चिन्ही पारती ओडिशा लेखिका संसद को से रेकग्नाइज करछन्ते आमे तांका प्रति कृतज्ञता प्रकाश करिवो पचारिबो यू वांट टू आस्क मी क्वेश्चन
बर्तमान मोर प्रश्न काननबाला पट्टनायक को सी तांकर अनुवाद विषय कौन कहबार अछि तांकर से वक्तव्य रखिबे
एक्चुअली शरद कुमारी मिश्र जने शिशु साहित्यक सी तारी उपरे मते प्रश्न पचारिया को चाहूतिले जे आपण केते खंड बही अनुवाद करचंदी एवं शिशु साहित्य मानक पई शिशु साहित्यिक मानक पई केते केमती करचंदी शिशु मानक पई मोर नेपाली लेखिका होची एइथि पई मु जाइथिली नेपाल ऑल इंडिया कॉन्फ्रेंस रे सेठी मु गोटे हिंदी कविता पाठ करू करू मते अवार्ड मिली उपराष्ट्रपति मुझे तापर लिखा भरोसा कली शकुंतला बलियार सिंह महोदय को कारण सी मोर गुरु तापर मु नीति कथा बोलिक आम गोटे कमल संदेश बाहर तादर पिला बहुत सुंदर सुंदर कथा बाहर महात्मा गांधी अन्य मानक जिते अच्छा बहुत शिक्षणीय बहीटा से बहीटी कली अनुवाद पिला दुर्गा माता बोली इंग्राजी रे थिला मु नेपाल पुणी जाइथिली मो पुओ थिला सेठू मु इंग्राजी रु ताकू ओडिया को अनुवाद कली मते सहाय्य करथिला मोर मु टिके इंग्राजी रे दुर्बल मोर नातुणी तेणु तापर वर्णमाला आमर होची कार ना कुंतला कुमारी सापतंकर से बहीटी एबे करिछि आ त्रिलोचनर कविता 60टी करिछि ताकू करबी बही बिली भाबिछि आ ताकू तो शकुंतला बलियार सिंह न पचारे बा न देखाइले से बही केबे बाहरी पारे ना तेणु मु तांको धन्यवाद दउची ओडिशा लेखिका संसदर भौणी मानकू अनुवाद उपरे से जो पथ देखाइचंती पथ प्रदर्शिका हेचंती साधनारु सिद्धि जाहाको कहती आम माने निश्चिंत अनुप्राणित एवं सभापतित्व आसन से अलंकृत करुचंती ओडिशा लेखिका संसदर आउ थे मुझे धन्यवाद देवी आउ एतिकी कहबी शकुंतला बलियार सिंह नथिले आमे ओडिशा लेखिका संसद रे किछि नुह धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद मैडम मोर गोटे प्रश्न रोची यही अनुवाद युवपीढ़ी किभली भाव में प्रभाव पकेब एवं युवपीढ़ी को आगू को नबारे आमर सब कौन अवदान रहा उचित
युवपीढ़ी उपर ही प्रभाव पकेब कारण अनेक समय आम निज मदर टंग को जापरने इंग्लिश बा इंग्लिश पढ़ा जापरने हिंदी पढ़ा जापरने बा कौन कौन बही बाहर जापरने ट्रांसलेशन मध्यम जी जो भाषा प्रोफिशिएंट से बही पाइपर एवं अनेकंकर मु देखी मोर तो थिला पिला दिन अनेकंकर बहुत ट्रांसलेटेड बुक पढ़ा को बहुत आग्रह थाए देश विदेश में कौन हो घटना सब जानापी आउ जो इंग्लिश जमी ओडिया इंग्लिश को ट्रांसलेशन कर गुड़ाक सब जानीपर आउ प्रथम कथा हूँ निज मातृभाषा पर तो गुरुत्व देवाक पड़ो एति धन्यवाद गीतांजलि पाणी बहुत बढ़िया कहल प्रश्न कल
कृतज्ञता ज्ञापन करने को चाहिए ओडिशा लेखिका संसदर मो माता मानू मातृभूमि और भाषा उपर एत गूढ़ और मनपूर्ण तत्व प्रदान कर बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।